Sword of Coming Chapter 1035. The two sides hiked down the mountain. During the period, there was a drizzle without any warning. Lu Qin smiled and changed out 2 oil paper umbrellas and asked Chen Pingan if he needed a coat. Chen Pingan shook his head and reached out to take the oil paper umbrella. Took the initiative to ask Lu Qin for a pot of wine. The two drank as they walked, and veritably took the wine to the mountains and rains, went down the mountain with an umbrella, walked out of the Longgong ruins together, and suddenly returned to the country road to the village school. Chen Pingan put away the oiled paper umbrella, and said, "Is there a flying sword? Can I become a sword cultivator? Where Guangu is Zhu Lian?" Lu Qin shook the rein on the umbrella vigorously, and said with a smile, "I can't tell if I can't tell you, and I won't have friends if I tell you." Chen Pingan glanced at the cloth shoes that were soaked in rain and stained with mud. After a moment of concentration, he sighed, raised his head and smiled. "I'm called a true friend." There is no need to doubt Lu Chen's mind and methods, and it is widely recognized by the world. If he had been born 7,000 years earlier, there would have been a place for Lu Qin among the top 10 heroes in the ancient world. In a sense, Chen Pingan used the means of fullest avatar this time to sharpen his realm, to forge as much as possible the knowledge of the 3 religions and 100 schools of thought, and finally create a prototype of 3,000 small worlds for the caged bird and Jing Diyue. Doing the foreshadowing is a kind of imitation of, just take it as soon as you see it. For example, the sword spirit, or the sword bearer, had leaked the secret before, saying that Lu Qin might be secretly practicing boxing, trying to climb to the top of the martial arts. This is one of the clues that Chen Pingan had this conjecture at the water's edge. Since it's all guesswork anyway, you might as well be bold and think about Lu Qin, a headmaster who is gradually getting serious, thinking about it, even more powerful, even the most powerful in the future of that existence. Lu Qin raised the umbrella in his hands, like holding a sword, swinging his arms in a circle, and said frankly, "Whether or not you become a sword cultivator is not a good thing. For my own practice, there are endless troubles, and it belongs to a kind of stupidity who narrows his path." In his actions, Lu Qin changed from being a Taoist priest aiming at the 15th realm to being pragmatic and becoming a pure sword cultivator. It must have been a last resort, is an act of desperation. Having said that, Lu Qin turned to look at Chen Pingan with a smile. "Don't be nervous, it has nothing to do with you, it's all problems left over from history that have never been completely solved. Every family has a scripture that is difficult to read, and this is the case in every world. Lord Daoist has good intentions, and it can be regarded as a kind of precaution." After Chen Pingan gave this fair evaluation, he paused for a moment and said, "To be reasonable without an example is to say nothing. For example." Holding an umbrella, Lu Qin poked as he walked, a bit like the young Lu Xianyang of that year, and said slowly, "For example, the weather changes, Baiyujing is crumbling, and the whole world's Taoism is in jeopardy. Another example is the development of Qingming world. Senior brother, you had to talk to half a dozen people. The world is the enemy, and the invincible senior brother Yu has his own life. It seems that the incense of Baiyujing that can last for hundreds of thousands of years may be cut off. No matter what, I must change from bystander to brother yes side by side. Bye. If you want to be qualified to stand side by side with senior brother Yu and face the tide of the world, the poor road has only 2 choices. There's no chance of success. Either slap yourself in the face, and make the Tao that has been proven in the past 3,000 years fall short of success, 5 dreams and 7 heart signs, and hard work to the end. The bamboo basket is empty, just choose one of the kendos to climb high, infinitely close to the 15 realms, but it is infinitely small and far away from the 15th realm. Things that could not be done in the past 3,000 years, but there is a glimmer of hope, may not be done in the next 6,000 years. The poor can only go his own way, take over the authority of the world from senior brother Yu, and then there is no 100-year limit, and I will sit in Baiyujing for a long time, and the final situation will be similar to that of the boss of the Great Wall of Sword Chi, Sword Immortal. To kill to stop killing, no matter who it is, breaking the ban will be death. In this way, it means that there is no Lu Qin in the world anymore. Bai didn't need to take the initiative to visit Nanhua City. Speaking of this in one breath, Lu Qin threw the empty wine jug into the stream. Chen Pingan smiled and comforted. The same rice raises 100 kinds of people, and being in charge of the house for 3 years is disgusting with dogs, not to mention teaching the world for 100 years. Lu Chen's expression became strange. It turned out that when he was a junior brother in Baiyujing before, he also used a similar reason to comfort senior brother Yu, but he was squinted, and senior brother Yu was obviously not appreciative. Chen Pingan asked, "The so-called half of the world you just called, is it the half of the Qingming world outside of Baiyujing, or is Baiyujing itself included?" Lu Chen laughed and said, "It may be possible. The little Daoist Jiang Yunxing of Shinshao City, Zhang Fenghai, the little Yudo of Yushu City, etc. They can be regarded as the native Baiyujing Taoist officials, and the different contexts, cultivation paths and mental paths revealed in them, one by one, accidental, appears much more. In fact, it is some kind of inevitability." At the beginning, Lu Qin lent Chen Pingan a 14th level Taoist method, but the sequelae have gradually become prominent. It was like pulling the seedlings to encourage growth, which made Chen Pingan temporarily obtain a realm that did not belong to him. And from the height of the 14-level cultivator, he views the mountains and rivers of the Aquarius continent as a palm pattern. When the realm is returned, there will be a gap, such as a poor child suddenly becoming rich and noble, and like a rich and noble child falling into the family path again. If it is not properly resolved, Chen Pingan will sooner or later be world-weary. Therefore, Lu Chen's return to Haoran this time, in addition to looking for Ning Ji, is a business affair, and he has a selfish desire to see Chen Ping's current state of mind. If there is a chance, I will remind Chen Pingan a few words. If willing, Lu Chen will also help to check and fill in the gaps. This is the reason why Lu Chen is Lu Chen, and there can only be one Lu Chen in the world. Then Chen Pingan did not disappoint Lu Chen. There were a total of 9 talisman avatars scattered across the continent, either in the city or at the foot of the mountain, no more than halfway up the mountain. This is a remedy for Chen Pingan, and he must deepen his impression of the world and the mountains before going to the 5 realms. Of course, there is also a hidden attempt that Chen Pingan did intentionally and did not know about it. Lu Chen was on the bank of the ancient lake, and he had roughly guessed why Chen Pingan had worked so hard to deceive himself and then lied to the sky. As his real identity, Chen Pingan uses the pseudonym Qin Ji here. In fact, before drinking at the same table with the water Gaojiu of the Shimei River, Lu Chen noticed the clues, but Chen Pingan didn't take it seriously, and Gaojiu just regarded it as a kind of slapstick. There are many words that the speaker has no intention of listening to. Then there are still some words, those who speak intentionally and those who listen without intention. For example, it's already a legacy, and those who look at it later will also feel the gentleness, and for example, I am a long-term visitor, and I must not leave one. Lu Chen looked at Chen Pingan and patted him on the shoulder. In some things, you are much better than me. So Lu Chen was willing to pretend that he didn't know about this matter, so he could see through it but not tell it. Just because Chen Pingan at this moment was destined to not understand these contents, Lu Chen changed the subject and continued, "Because I can't have the Yin God, I will take the next step, start the Big Dipper Star Bureau, and become 9. You are completely don't belittle yourself and regard it as a parody of Lu Chen's 5 Dreams and 7 Hearts. You are only a few years old, and it is quite not tacky to have such accomplishments." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Master Lu's boasting method is not tacky." Lu Chen asked, "Can you take the liberty to ask, why did you fail when you tried to break through the border twice?" In the private dojo in Mixufeng Changchundongtian, Chen Pingan had already entered the Jade Pure Realm twice without success, so the third time, he was cautious, and he could not be too careful. Chen Pingan hesitated for a moment, but still frankly explained the rough process and ending of the two retreats. The first retreat, I encountered a lot of demons, which is very different from the past experience of the nascent soul monks I know. But these inner demons are too fragile. Although they seem to be surrounded by danger, they have experienced some difficulties. Killing them one by one is the kind of false alarm. So I noticed that something was wrong, so in the Jade Pure Realm I didn't dare to take that step, because I was worried that there would be a huge trap. Before the second retreat, I made a series of targeted arrangements in advance, and felt that it was foolproof, and the result was within that situation. It was different again, there was no specific demon that manifested, the sky and the earth were empty, all alone, walking alone. Then I found that there was a problem with my memory. I couldn't remember many people and many things, or every time if I take a step, I forget a little bit. If I stop in the same place, the river of time will stagnate, and there will be no change in the slightest. When I take a step back, I will remember one more person or one thing, and I will go forward. Forgetting, since it is a closed-door retreat, and you want to break through, it is impossible to keep going in circles and ghosts hitting the wall, in a daze, confused, and I don't know how long and how far. Finally, there is a long river that is not wide but insurmountable. On the other side of the river, there seem to be faceless people standing staring at me. I know they all recognize me, even the most important person in my life, but I just can't remember them. The more I think about it, the more remembering them, the river became wider and wider. The most terrifying thing was when I turned around and found that the people around me who had clear faces were all blurred. My Tao heart did not collapse because of this. On the contrary, I became more and more determined, and I seemed to be in the dark. Through countless careful calculations and reasoning, I finally made a decision to choose the lesser of two evils, but only my intuition told me that it was rationally correct. A cultivation path that does not go straight as I expected, can also climb high, or even reach the top, but there will be two of myself and two of Chen Pingan. Chen Pingan, who rarely sighed, couldn't help sighing deeply after saying these words in his heart. Lu Qin smiled and said, "Do you feel like it's mediocrity to quit this weird state of mind?" Chen Pingan reluctantly said, "I thought about it for a long time in the dojo, but there was no answer. When I left the dojo, I was forced to make a cut with these thoughts, so as not to affect my daily life." Lu Qin stretched out his arm, held a long sword, and fiddled with the grass and trees by the roadside, saying some digressions, saying a word that broke the mystery. I was in Baiyujing, with the help of a foreign object, I did some deductions. Figured out the immortal picture on Yi Yanyan's hand and the Yunkatang in Pushun. You didn't open it, that's right. Because there's a fake Qi Jingchen hidden in it, it's... Lu Qin raised his finger and pointed to the sky. It's the imaginary Qi Jingchen that Guy imagined. If you open the picture scroll in Tonggishao and meet this Qi Jingchen, you will be in big trouble. This kind of trouble doesn't mean that you will be stuck in Earth Immortal 1 for a long time. On the contrary, it can help you break through an equally false inner demon. In the Qingping Sword Sect Dojo, you can become a jade without any stagnation, and you can even quickly cross the fairyland and enter the Ascension realm like a broken bamboo. It is to pull the seedlings and encourage growth, nourish and strengthen your divinity with the Tao heart of a Qi practitioner. The result of this behavior is somewhat similar to me abandoning the 5 dreams and 7 hearts in exchange for a pure sword cultivator. In the short term, it is a great good thing. In the long run the trouble is endless. Chen Pingan was horrified. After Lu Qin said these words, he couldn't help but scold at his mother. He stretched out his arm and wiped his nose, and the nosebleed started. Lu Qin raised his head, rubbed his nose lightly, and stopped the bleeding first. All of a sudden, I let go of it completely, swearing, scolding Show me for being a ghost, show me, if you have the ability, come to the world to fight against the poor, you bastard, relying on an ancient heaven as a dojo, bullying a Een. What kind of skill is Lu Qin, who has not returned to his place? Chen Pingan turned his head to look at Lu Qin. Lu Qin waved his hand, smiled and said, "It's okay, after all, it's far away, this dog, show me, can't use all his strength, it's just like a blow from a cultivator at the peak of the 14th realm, drizzle, no does it hurt." Chen Pingan was silent for a moment, then reminded, "Daoish Lu, there is a nosebleed again, wipe it off." Angrily, Lu Qin raised his hand to wipe off the nosebleed, and continued to chant, like a shrew, cursing Zhou Misheng's son for having no eyes, getting struck by lightning while walking, and dying so he couldn't afford a coffin board. Chen Pingan just wanted to speak. Lu Qin suddenly changed from a ill appearance to a fierce, full of energy. "What do you think? If it is too early to turn the Lu Qin in your heart into a careful one, where will you win? In the battlefield. Go on, you can only use your spirit and you can only send people's heads to give military exploits, don't do it, you are a person who has been a hidden official, this kind of simple truth, you don't need me to say more." Chen Pingan asked, "How is the injury?" Lu Qin struttingly said, no matter how good the relationship is, the two of us will still inevitably have a question and fight in the future. How can we let you know the depth of the poor man's ability to fight?" Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Since Daoist Lu has said so, then I believe it." Lu Qin nodded vigorously and said, "I'm worried that no one has to worry about Pindao. Pindao will blow this cow here today." Because he had entered Chen Pingan's state of mind, Lu Qin had come face to face with that existence. It is very clear that the key to Qin Ping's self-imprisonment is that the formation of book cities and book mountains is secondary, and the crisscrossing fences, veins of blank nothingness are the key to besieging that existence. Because every thread is forgotten by Chen Pingan on purpose. Based on this, Lu Qin knew why Chen Pingan failed twice in his attempts to return to the Jade Purity realm. Lu Qin once said an unintentional remark that all newly formed habits are a kind of forgetting and a betrayal of himself. Moreover, if Chen Pingan's inner demon needs to go deeper and become an enemy, Chen Pingan needs to take the initiative to forget those beautiful people and things on the road of life. This inner demon can be said to be as light as a feather. As long as Chen Pingan himself is willing to take that step, it will be easy to pass this worry, and it will be a matter of course. But can Chen Pingan do it? Probably this is the real intractable and terrifying aspect of inner demons that cultivators need to face. Just like when Zhou Zi set up a stall in Xinghua Alley back then, that string of candied haws that were given away without payment, maybe all the children in Lizidongshan didn't care if they ate it, but the orphan in Nipping Alley couldn't eat it. In short, we may be able to walk out of a suffering book lake, but we may not be able to walk out of a lonely mountain with beauty everywhere. The unbearable past, walk with your back, every step on the road of life, don't look back, and finally you can go further and further until you are completely relieved. Lu Qin suddenly said, "Ordinary people, who dares to say that it will rain or not rain tomorrow? How many people carry umbrellas with them every time they go out?" Chen Pingan nodded and said, "I have figured it out." Just now in the ruins of the Dragon Palace, the sudden mountain rain was naturally deliberately done by Lu Qin. In the capital of Dali, when Chen Pingan went to look for Zhou Haijing, a female martial arts master in a rough alley, he was also wearing cloth shoes at the time. Therefore, he was misunderstood by the meticulous Zhou Haijing, and regarded Chen Pingan as a monk on the mountain in the impression. Every time he went down the mountain, he was either a condescending experience, or he was playing in the world. In Lu Chen's view, it's enough for you, Chen Pingan, to leave a pair of cloth shoes without wearing them. It is enough to keep them for a long time. The rest of the cloth shoes should be worn as they should. No matter it is sunny or rainy, they should be worn outside the house and walk on the side of the road. If they get dirty, they will be dirty. If they are dirty, they should be washed. If you cherish them too much, it will go against the original intention of the person who gave them the cloth shoes. Lu Qin smiled and said, if everything is good in our hearts, it will become a burden. So what is the meaning of goodness? If so, there must be something wrong with us. Chen Pingan nodded and said, I just found out that Daoist Lu is a good hand. Lu Qin laughed and said, I just know. Afterwards, we walked and chatted. I talked about the 3 kinds of immortal money on the mountain that condense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It is imperative to establish the next sect in Luopao Mountain. In Lu Chen's view, there is a Qingping sword sect in Tonggishao. This move is not in a hurry, but at the right time. Otherwise, all of them will be crowded on Luopao Mountain, even if there are indeed a few vassal hilltops there, but only Xiao Mo, Bai Jing and the others, even if they do not absorb the local spiritual energy, but you and I know very well that a great cultivator is a great cultivator. Even if they don't move at all and don't grab the slightest bit from the outside world, the impact on the landscape is extremely considerable and far-reaching. If Luopao Mountain is not divided into a lower sect, then adding Cui Dongshan and Miyu to stay in the mountain, it will be too bloated, and if the family is too big, it will invisibly thin Luopao Mountain, even Piyun Mountain and the entire Beiyue, the luck of the land. I miss some people. Miss is a drunk town without drinking. The only way to get out of this drunken town is to drink. Young people, energetic, like and dare to deny the many unreasonable things in the world. The hearts and minds of some old gentlemen are propped up by history and suffering, so on the side of all kinds of young people, these old people are willing to say good things and give affirmation to the words and deeds of young people. Lu Chen suddenly asked, with or without Yuanhua Jing, you will always go to that Luzong temple. Maybe it's just a change of identity, eating fast food, copying scriptures, and occasionally following the little novice to climb the mountain with a stick to watch the clouds rise, right? Chen Pingan nodded. Lu Chen said, but without Yuan Huajing going down the mountain temporarily and speaking to you honestly, without his reminder, you may copy the scriptures over there, and you won't know the illusion, and it is not clear that there are 6 hidden in the temple. The side where the ancestors pounded the rice waste stone was sloughed. Chen Pingan nodded and said, of course. Lu Chen smiled and said, this is the Buddha's fate. Chen Pingan wondered, what do you want to explain? Lu Chen said, Buddhist Arhat, 16 Ingjing, resident in the human world to protect the Dharma. Chen Pingan smiled and said, Master Lu, don't go around in circles. Lu Chen said, the Zhuji sect has 2 hilltops, and now it is the Chuayu mountain line that has gained power. In fact, the ancestor mountain was Jizu Mountain in the early days, and on Jizu Mountain, in history, there was an Arhat who lived in the world. As for Buddhism, the reason, the history is long, there is no evidence to check, and there is no opportunity to ask face to face, so the poor can only make some reasonable guesses, such as the 8 Buddhist schools, among which there are dragons, and the ancient Shu land, where the dragons appear, the number of them. The number of crowns in the world, there is no one. Your brother Junqian. And Chen Qinglu, who caused the battle of beheading the dragon, Mr. Xing's preaching mentor, and Chen Daxianjin who has returned to the 14th realm. His cultivation place is in Qinggong Mountain, Luxiaozu. However, the place of proving the Tao is in Aquarius, and he entered the 14 realm sword cultivation on the road of proving the Tao, similar to Buddhist vows. Cui Dongshan was thinking about it but couldn't find the cicada shedding cave, and the remains of the sword immortals and the skeletons of many flood dragons in it have never failed in terms of cause and effect. In the past, every dragon kiln in Longquan County had an experienced master who was responsible for guarding it. Buddhists say that in the Saha world, everyone is in a firehouse. There are many sea and land dragon kings under the jurisdiction of the ancient heaven, who are in charge of cloud and rain, so one of their most important bosses is 2 rain masters. In your hometown, there is also a kiln worker named Su Han, his niece, who is one of Old Man Yang's boxing apprentices, Su Dian, nicknamed Rouge. Old Man Yang accepts apprentices and only teaches boxing, never to pass on immortal arts in Taoism. Chen Pingan finally spoke, nodded and said, "Understood." In the opinion of the Old Man Yang of the pharmacy, after 10,000 years, as a pure martial artist, will he have the opportunity to traverse a real road to becoming a god. This was a road that was only a step and a half away before 10,000 years, but since the first ancestor of the military family failed to reach the top, after 10,000 years, it was still a brand new road. The ancient female Rain Master, who was reincarnated in Lizhu Dongtian, was named Su Han, and was still a man who was scolded as a sissy. Good fortune tricks people, and before you know it, the Rain Master burns the fire. The kiln mouth of the long kiln on the other side of the hometown is known as its own 1,000-year-old kiln fire. And the kiln mouth where Chen Pingan and Lu Xianyang were located, eventually went out due to a failure in the care of the kiln in Su Han, and there was a series of twists and turns that followed. In a Lizhu cave, all the younger generations in the town have their own futures. Chen Pingan and Lu Qin walked slowly back to the village school. Zhao Shuxia and Ning Ji hadn't slept yet, which was normal. It was strange to be able to fall asleep. The old Xiuzai was still sleeping in the house, and Lu Chen was about to leave. He also drank wine and ate supper. Lu Chen took off the black cloth bag from his waist, handed it to Ning Ji, and said with a smile, "The relics of the deceased are of no use in the hands of Pindao, only to eat ashes and waste the things of the world. Ning Ji, if you like to go up the mountain to collect medicine, just I gave it to you. In the future, if you encounter some dangerous situations, if there is no helper and no one to protect you, you can use this to save yourself. Remember the secret code you and I agreed to before, shake this blue sack, and call it. As for how to save people in the future, on the way to school, on the way to mountain climbing, don't worry, just take a step by step." The young man was still pure and did not rush to take the parting gift. He asked with a puzzled face, "Master Lu, what is the secret code?" Lu Qin smiled and forcibly shoved the blue sack into Ning Jia's hand, reached out and patted Ning Jia's shoulder. "It's the name of those 3 words. It involves our relationship, personal friendship. I told you before, think about it." Ning Ji thought about it for a moment, and seemed to remember that title, Little Master. Although Ning Ji knew nothing about the rules of Confucianism and mountain cultivation, but intuition told the boy that this matter might be incompatible with etiquette, so the boy subconsciously turned his head to look at Chen Pingan. Although Chen Pingan didn't know what to do, he could trust the young man's mind and Lu Qin, and said with a smile, on Lu Daichang's side, "You don't need to be so rigid, you can be more casual." This is also Ningji's own fate. As a teacher, preaching and teaching careers to solve doubts, you can't always think that it is good to turn students and disciples into yourself, but it is a big taboo. Before that, Lu Qin also sent a pair of seals to Ning Ji, which were beneficial for opening the book, and Ning Ji has read it. Including the blue sack, the heaviest gift, of course, is the seemingly ethereal One Miao's name, Little Master. This is also an exception made by Lu Qin, which means that Ning Ji, who has already worshipped Shicha, has not been fully handed over to Chen Pingan. Lu Qin wants to share part of the cause and effect. Lu Qin smiled and said, "Yongjia County, the capital of Yushuan Kingdom, don't worry, your grandfather is a lucky man." Ning Ji, before parting, Pindao also wants to say a few words to you. Those who study do not focus on knowledge, and those who cultivate Taoism do not focus on art. A Qi trainer who has just climbed a mountain and practiced for the first time, and firstly learned the chapter on interior scenery. The inside is the heart, and the scenery is the image. The external image is outside the small world, the sun, moon, stars, mountains, clouds, rain, snow, and all things, and the internal image is within one's own skin. The image of flesh, bones, viscera, and soul. The heart resides in the body, thinking and contemplation, and luck is divine. This place is mysterious, and the words are unclear, and you will need to experience it yourself in the future. It's a good thing for a young man to have youthful ambitions, to be brave, and to write white snow articles, but remember one thing: if you are a human being, you have no place in your heart for others. It's getting narrower. The former is the secret of Taoism, and the latter is the doctrine of Confucianism. It is better to teach a man how to fish than to teach him how to fish. When you are young, you should read books, practice when you are young, and resolve to be the first priority. The so-called preaching, the master leads the door to practice in the individual. The so-called protection of the Tao is like taking someone to a temple to burn incense, and entering the mountain gate. The incense still has to be burned, and incense by oneself. Lu Chen pointed to the top of the mountain not far from the school, and said solemnly, "I have seen this mountain, and I think the scenery is very good. If I go to see Pian Mountain in the future, I think it is better there." "It is very good, but if you think the mountain is not so good, is it really good?" Lu Chen coughed. "Pin Dao means that I can't see Mr. Chen's goodness in the future, and I feel that Pin Dao is not good at all." Chen Pingan was very cheering and said with a smile, "Ning Ji, don't appreciate the immortal demeanor of Master Lu's 2 Taoist contracts and dislike your husband's shallow knowledge." Ning Ji smiled shyly. Lu Chen smiled and asked, "Do you know what the first talisman in the world is?" Ning Ji was at a loss. Unlike Ning Ji, the younger brother, Zhao Xuxia had also traveled to the mountains and rivers of the 2 continents because he was familiar with Luopao Mountain, so Zhao Xuxia began to frown and think. Lu Chen smiled and said, "It's far away in the sky and in front of me, so Pin Dao clearly has already given the answer." Ning Ji became more and more puzzled. Zhao Xuxia remained silent. Chen Pingan had actually guessed the answer. There were only a few guesses before, but since Lu Chen asked this question, Chen Pingan was sure. Lu Chen's answer is hard to guess, but it's just as simple as voice. For example, the Confucian sages' mouths contain Tianxian, the Taoist real people's words and dharmas follow, and the secret words and mantras of Buddhism. One of Chen Ping's talisman clones, the aged scholar who copied scriptures in the Luzong temple in Yuzhou, would go to the pavilion by the cliff in the mountain together when the clouds rose and the little novices knocked on the window to invite him. Every time that Chen Pingan watched the sea of clouds at Jushan Cliff, he would put on a strange posture and pronounce a series of syllables. Lu Chen smiled, shook his sleeves, and snapped his fingers gently. In the field of vision of Ning Ji and Zhao Xuxia, they could only see the fine lines in the air, undulating, like a rippling hydrographic scroll. Why is the threshold of cultivator Fu Lu so high? The reason is very simple. In the past, the most suitable Taoist in the world to draw talismans was actually a pure warrior who took the path of becoming a in the flesh. All in one go. Ning Ji, you can study arithmetic more with your husband in the future. Lu Chen put away the vision and suggested with a smile, there are hundreds of schools of thought. Among them, the mathematicians spend a lot of time on paper, but unfortunately they end up in the same situation as the merchants. It's definitely not right. On the way of arithmetic, among the direct disciples of Wen Xing's lineage, all of them may be experts except Chen Pingan. Cui Yu and Qi Jingchen are the kind of people who can see the answer at a glance. They can even solve problems, or even problems for the world. In addition, senior brother left and right and senior brother Jun Qian are only relatively inferior. With senior brother Cui Yu and junior brother Qi Jingchen, who have made great achievements in the line of Taoism, they will appear unknown and unremarkable. As for Chen Pingan, when he was in the summer palace, he often read the monograph on arithmetic in his spare time. This is why Chen Pingon came to the Yellow Flower View in Mirage City and looked at the prince with admiration. In the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Guizhuzhou, who later became a disciple of Chen Pingon as she wished, often spread out those arithmetic books, pointed at her, and took care of her own words. On the contrary, Lin Junbai, Chao Gun, and several foreign sword cultivators are all smart people who use arithmetic and solving problems as a pastime, and they like to make their own problems and embarrass others. Back then, the only sword cultivator who could support the local sword cultivator and gain face back was Jian Xian Chou Miao. Lu Qin turned his head to look at the young warrior. Having patience in a master, Pin Dao believes that you will definitely be a late bloomer. Zhao Shu was stunned, out of courtesy, and thanked the headmaster Lu, who seemed to suddenly utter a prophecy. In fact, Zhao Shusha didn't think much about how high his martial arts achievements could go in the future. Previously on the second floor of Luoluo Mangosteen, Zhao Shusha became Chen Ping's close disciple in Boxing 1. It's just that this kind of identity belongs to an internal decision of one's own door, and it cannot be revealed on the Golden and Jade genealogy of Luopa Mountain, which is somewhat similar to the relationship between official history and private history books. Of course, it doesn't mean that Chen Pingon accepted Zhao Shusha as a closed-door disciple, so he can't teach others boxing. It's just that the name has been set, and people who learn boxing with Chen Pingon in the future, such as Ning Ji, are really just learning boxing. Qi practitioners on the mountain, especially long-established cultivators, taking close disciples is a first-class event outside of their own cultivation. Just like the people in the rivers and lakes at the foot of the mountain, who are getting old and want to wash their hands in a golden pot and quit the arena completely, they must have a big fight. Looking at the entire vast world, in history, the great monks took close disciples, and as a result, they saw the cultivator embryos with excellent root and bone qualifications, and temporarily regretted it. This kind of situation is not uncommon, but the three masters and disciples often end up in the mountains. For the laughing stock. If you are a pure martial artist, you will not be young when you reach the age of innocence. But Chen Pingon is not only a martial artist, but also a swordsman, so he is still very young, so it is unlikely that Ning Ji will become Chen Ping's close disciple. Lu Shindi said, Ning Ji, you will succeed in your studies in the future, you will always return to your hometown to worship your ancestors one day, and the poor road will tell you something related to the elementary school, geography, not to mention the scenery of the top of the mountain. Only it is said that halfway up the mountain, there are roughly two factions. One of them is the method of choosing the land for the house, which is based on the 5 elements and gossip, and the principle of determinism and restraint. The other is mainly based on the situation. In terms of orientation, the matching of sand and water in the Dragon Cave. In the eyes of Xingjia, mountains are like grass and trees, with stems and branches, receiving the breath of mountains and rivers, like the sunshine of a fire mirror, the dead bones can be blessed and descendants. Good luck, is it plausible? Lu Qin asked himself and answered, you can't believe it all, you can't completely disbelieve it. Ning Ji looked complicated and hesitated to say anything, but finally nodded and put the cloth bag away. As if it was with these white knowledge, the young man and Dao Chonglu thanked them together. Although it was only a short nap, at most half an hour, the old Xiuzai seemed to have slept fully and was refreshed. The teaching question is so big, how can I do the same thing as copying books? If I remember correctly, these contents are from the reading notes of a writer. What is it called? Chen Pingon smiled and said, the burial chapter from the book Yu Tsong Kao is relatively uncommon, and there are not many booksellers' engravings. Lu Qin didn't feel embarrassed either. In terms of the thickness of his face, the old scholar was the first in the world, Al Yang was the second, and the poor man was the third, right? The old scholar stepped out of the threshold and seemed to be very chatty, and he talked to the young man, even if the gentleman's seal is beheaded for 5 generations, the sages still only persuade people to do good deeds, and the sages treat wealth, honor and blessings as normal things, and are not afraid of future generations. The virtuous and the poor are only afraid that the descendants will not be virtuous but rich and noble. The laity only regards wealth and honor as a blessing, but they do not know how to cherish happiness as a blessing. Therefore, beyond the so-called lyoha, the sage exists regardless of it. There must be considerable things in the small way, and the far-reaching fear of mud, so the gentleman does not do it. Therefore, there are hundreds of books of this kind, and many words are circulated, which is originally stupid. A gentleman only talks about self-cultivation, not relatives, and choosing a burial is a matter of self-cultivation. Otherwise, the ancient and modern wealthy families, the gods on the mountains, why don't they all get auspicious places, and the blessings stretch for thousands of years and 10,000 years? Why are they like ordinary doors, often suffering disasters, and even more disasters than ordinary people, and they can easily affect the whole door? Disasters are the seasons of the heavens. To rule the chaos is the fortune of the country. Yin and evil are the merits of the ancestors. Doing evil and doing good deeds are also related to human affairs. Assuming that one side of the water and soil nurtures the other side, then the rise and fall of heaven's fortunes will follow people and transfer, which in turn will affect the geography. Taking a step back for a moment, looking at the hundreds of photo books and geography books, there is one sentence that can benefit the people of the world. A rogue man, who does not sacrifice and sweeps when he is old, even if he goes to the grave, is a perfunctory thing. Just imagine, if the deceased really had knowledge under the spring, and the ancestors had spirit, seeing this situation, would not be chilled. Take a step back from this. The living man's house and the deceased cemetery have real knowledge. They can pay attention to it carefully, recognize the blessings of their descendants, and can be cultivated by the merits of their ancestors, and they can be shaded by the feng shui of the yin house. Then you need to pay attention. In later generations, it is not for the roads of the city, not for the plowing of the fields, not to be taken away by the wealthy, and not necessarily to seek happiness, but to avoid the cold and cold valleys, and avoid floods and ants. At the same time, it is necessary to avoid the land of 5 arrows. It is 100 miles away from home, the distance is too long, and it is not easy to make sacrifices every year. It is located next to the big clan, and it is easy to be robbed. Wait, you should be more taboo, and on the other hand, don't do to others what you don't want to do to others, and in the future, when you become rich, don't embarrass others. Generally speaking, if you are not an expert in choosing a burial place, you generally only need to have a bright atmosphere and a wide and clean situation, and you don't have to stick to the hexagrams of the stars and the earth. It is good to go away from the evil, and you should be safe and secure. Heaven and earth are united, and then the nectar will fall. The yang energy is steamed, and the soil is anointed. The spring is planted and the autumn is harvested, the summer is hot and the winter is cold. Whether it's self-cultivation before death or choosing a place to rest after death, I also have the most stupid trick on my side, just 8 words. Speaking of which, the old scholar twitched his beard and smiled, as if he had deliberately sold a slap in the face, and even believed that his close disciple, and the pedantic Master Lu, could think of those 8 words. Lu Qin smiled and said, "Be honest and sleep at ease." Chen Pingan said, "Seek justice, and there is a wide road." Sword of Coming Chapter 1036. 2 figures quietly floated from the sea of clouds to a mountain range in the waters of the Shimei River. Chen Lingjun was worried and asked anxiously, Xiao Mo, what do you say?" It turned out that it was just on the side of Luopa Mountain. It was good. Everyone gathered together and listened to Brother Dofing talking about the sky in the courtyard of the old cook. Xiao Mo suddenly said that there was something wrong with the school, as if the young master's breath had suddenly disappeared. Logically speaking, this is absolutely impossible. Although Chen Pingan deliberately gathers qi and fist intent over there, it is no different from ordinary people, but as a martial artist of the end, even in a state of deep sleep, it is like a mysterious state sheltered by a god. How could it be possible? If you say that you are missing, and on the other side of Luopao Mountain, it is very clear that the mountain owner is a teacher in the school, and generally will not reveal his identity. So Xiao Mo wanted to come here to have a look, and Chen Lingjun came here to see what happened. Xiao Mo smiled and said, "It's all right, it's Daoist Lu who accompanied the young master to visit the ruins of the Dragon Palace." When he heard that it was the headmaster of Bai Yujing Lu, he was relieved, and Chen Lingjun could not avoid one head and too big. If possible, Chen Lingjun really didn't want to see the third Lu, who has to find a boss quickly to see if his brain is ill. In terms of loyalty to his master, and looking at the entire Luopa mountain, Chen Lingjun believes that he is only Xiao Mo, who can fight with himself. So Chen Lingjun felt relieved when he heard Xiaomo said it was okay. The reason is very simple. Xiaomo said it was a trivial matter. For Chen Lingjun, who has not yet been in the upper 5 realms, it may not be a trivial matter, but if Xiaomo said it was okay, it was definitely okay. Of course, Xiaomo's qualifications are still a bit shallower than his own. After all, it is not a year or two that he is late for going up the mountain. Seeing the sun and Dao Chonglu returning to the country road from a distance, Xiaomo will quietly return to Luopao Mountain. It was a rare trip out, so Chen Lingjun didn't think about returning to Luopao Mountain so quickly, and let Xiaomo go back first. Anyway, there is his town here. Forgive that Lu Qing'u, no matter how daring he is, doesn't dare to make a fool out of it. Xiao Mo thought for a while, and then returned to Luopa Mountain by himself. Just let Chen Lingjun be careful, and say hello to him if something happened. Chen Lingjun would definitely not be happy to let other people say such bastards. What a small heart, in this Beiyue realm, who would dare to provoke Uncle Chen, who is not so famous just because he cultivates his mind. When my nascent soul realm cultivation base is a decoration. Don't not treat the nascent soul immortal as a dish. It's just that Xiao Mo said that Chen Lingjun would endure it. On the mountain, Chen Lingjun seems to be very busy every day, but in fact no one knows what he is busy with. Maybe the boy in Xingyi himself doesn't know. As soon as Xiao Mo left, Chen Lingjun threw his sleeves and swayed down the mountain. Because he had an agreement with his master, Chen Lingjun didn't think about going to the school or the Longgong ruins. He went down the mountain and wandered all the way. After about half an hour, he came to a stone bridge next to the river. There was an old plum tree that was hundreds of years old, and Chen Lingjun saw a stranger, with a boy beside him, who followed him with a qin and a donkey. Visiting May by the stream under the moon is so elegant. It's just that Chen Lingjun watched his breathing, and it seemed that he was still a qi practitioner. Never thinking about the man who looked like a scholar, he turned his head and said with a smile, the joy of surprise, "Never thought that I would be able to meet a fellow Taoist who cultivates qi and cultivates longevity in such a remote country, and dares to ask questions." Chen Lingjun didn't turn around when he heard the words, just raised his hand, turned his back to the guy who took the initiative to strike up a conversation, and shook his palm. "If you're not familiar with it, don't get too close, and go your own way." The boy who looked like a book boy with a piano bag said in his heart, "Master, he is." Before the young man could finish speaking, he found that the master had already cast his gaze towards him. His eyes were so sharp that the juvenile was so frightened that he didn't even dare to continue his words. "Who is he, and need you to introduce him?" The Confucian scholar was furious and furious. What was the seemingly hidden inner voice among the monks on the mountain? An unknown thing. Has the 1,000 years of practice in Qinggong Mountain all cultivated into the dog? The Confucian scholar regretted bringing this proud disciple to visit the senior on the mountain. He is the first person on Lixiaozu Mountain, Jinghao with the Taoist name, Qinggong Taibao. Yu Xiandao, who had successfully joined the Tao in Tianwai before, met Wen Xing, and Jinghao thought of coming here to take a look. It is better to solve the enemy and not to tie it up. It is better sooner rather than later. The dignified Ascension Realm cultivator returned to Howran from outside the sky. After arriving at Aquarius, Jinghao didn't dare to go straight to the Huaihuang County, let alone go to Luopao Mountain to be a guest. As for this disciple of Zhu Yan Yushu, Yupujing, he was supposed to be one of the candidates for the next suzerain. He was recently in charge of secretly collecting information on the Little Dragon King of Luopao Mountain, on the side of the Dali dynasty. Now it seems that not only is it unfavorable to do things, but also that the cultivation of the mind is not successful, and it is a waste that cannot be supported. Jinghao thought for a while, seeking wealth and wealth at risk, he still took a certain risk and let his disciple stay where he was. He quickly caught up with the boy in Xingyi. I don't know why, how to look at it, this Chen Lingjun, who was called a brother by Chen Xianjun, is just a nascent soul realm water flood dragon. Chen Lingjun stopped and turned around. On the surface, he looked calm, but he was really worried. Damn, you can't go out for a rare trip and be beaten to death by someone inexplicably. It's okay, as long as he can hold 2 punches, Xiao Mo will definitely be able to get here. What's more, his master is nearby, and this is Wei Shanjun's territory. Chen Lingjun thought about it, and no matter how he looked at it, there was no reason to feel guilty. He suddenly calmed down, shook his sleeves, put his hands behind him, and planned to look what medicine is sold in that guy's gourd. Jinghao folded his fists and said with a smile, fellow Daoist, I am a foreigner, from a place called Finjuan Mountain, a small faction, you may not have heard of it, this is the first time I have traveled to the Dali Mountains and rivers, I am fortunate to meeting. Chen Lingjun clenched his fists and shook it a few times, and said politely, it's a pleasure to meet you. Jinghao asked with a smile, do you also go out to visit the scenery of the Shimei River? Or is it a loose immortal who is not bound by the world and sects? Sanxian, after all, sounds much better than Shanzai Xiu. Fenjuan Mountain is a vassal enclave of Qinggong Mountain. It can be regarded as a second-rate sect with a small background in Lixiaozu. It is really not well known when it comes out of Lixiaozu. Seeing that when Chen Lingjun heard Fenjianshan, his face was really dazed, and he didn't seem to be fake. Chen Lingjun said with a smile, Fundamental Mountains, the top of the mountain in the south, I heard that it is a treasure land of feng shui for talents. In his own Beiyue realm, big and small hilltop schools, Chen Lingjun can be said to be quite familiar. As for the immortal mansion on the mountain on the south side of Aquarius Island, he was blinded, and Chen Lingjun was not very interested. No matter how old-fashioned Jinghao was, he still didn't know how to answer for a while. The juvenile, who listened to the conversation here under the plum tree by the bridge, was even more speechless. Who are you talking nonsense with your eyes open? Because Jinghao couldn't understand the true identity and realm of the other party, every time he opened his mouth, he had to carefully consider every word and make a good belly draft. As a result, after chatting and chatting, I found that this boy in Xingyi, who only appeared in Yujiang and Luopao Mountain, was a fool. Jinghao had no choice but to follow the tone and content of the other party's words, and then slipped on the watermelon peel to wherever she went, saying that she was also a scholar in the past, but she was depressed and unwilling, so she was able to go up the mountain to practice by accident. That's why I want to come here to be like fellow Taoists, but now I'm in a similar state of mind. My generation of cultivators, eating and drinking should have a pure heart and few desires. If you go down the mountain and join the world, you can shock the nations and help the people through the world, but if you can't take the Tao and come into the world, you will be wandering around the world, your words will not work, your situation will not suit your heart, and if you leave, you will abandon it like a pair of shoes, and you will have nothing outside yourself. The world is rolling. It is difficult for the rich and noble in the world to give up glory and wealth, and the poor are still afraid of losing the poor and the poor. Naturally, it makes no sense. Chen Lingjun couldn't speak, just nodded. When crepe is not sour, so eat more sauerkraut during the day. Not losing the battle, Chen Lingjun nodded when he finally waited for the opponent to take a breath. You Taoists' words are still somewhat learned and insightful, but they are a little vague and don't take the mountain vibe. Jing Hao can already be sure that the guy beside him is really just a cultivator in the nascent soul realm, and he must not have read a few books. While walking and chatting, about 2 miles away, Jing Hao suddenly glanced sideways. Yo, here comes a slightly higher realm, a dragon seed. Hey, still a sword cultivator. Moonlight leaked from the forest, and the ground was like snow, making the characters clearly defined. A young monk in a white robe stood in the forest, watching Jing Hao and Chen Lingjun from a distance. Chen Lingjun realized it later and turned his head to look at the cold-looking young man in white in the mountain. Why did I see a guy who likes to go out and wear white clothes again? Because last time Luopao Mountain came to a scholar of the nephew's generation, there was a big white goose in the front, and a nephew Zheng in the back, so now Chen Lingjun is for those who wear white clothes, that is frightened from the bottom of my heart. Fortunately, at this moment, Chen Lingjun's warm voice came from the side of Xinhu Lake, when he opened his mouth to say the first sentence by the bridge, I came over. It is roughly certain that this person's realm is not low, most of them are ascension cultivators from individual continents. But it's nothing. If this person has bad intentions, I will take him to Luopao Mountain as a guest for a few days. As for the sword cultivator who came from the monster in the mountains, he came out of the Dragon Palace ruins, and his realm and swordsmanship can be ignored. Xiao Mo, that's great. Chen Lingjun straightened his waist all of a sudden, full of courage. Apart from Jing Hao for the Tsingyi boy, there is of course the bottomless mountain of unhappiness. Apart from that, the Qing Palace Taibao really doesn't think that there are a few existences in Aquarius, which can make him jealous, even if it is that Wei Bo from Piyin Mountain was like that. So Jing Hao turned her head and said with a smile, no matter why Dio detours and chooses to show up here and now, I don't care what you ask for. Just say that if you get close to me in Dao Yu Qin, you won't need it. Not a traveler. The old dragon's son Long Sun, who had been trapped in the Dragon Palace for a long time, somehow found that the ban on the dojo had disappeared out of thin air. After hesitating, trembling and walking out of the deep pool, he did not have any backlash. After seeing the sun again, first his face was full of tears, and then he noticed that there were more ant monks in his Dragon Palace. Thinking of the 2 unpredictable Qi practitioners before, he resisted the urge to take action. More things are worse than less things. The matter of belonging to the Dragon Palace is more important than that. His own avenue is still a trivial matter. He dared to leave the site secretly. At the same time, he used the dual supernatural powers of Palm View Mountains and rivers and the water method of life. Suddenly, he saw the Piyin Mountain that was not in his memory. He originally wanted to go straight to the nearby one. Luo Peishan, just carefully sailing the Wanyan ship, gave up this idea, and found that under the nose, under the plum tree by the bridge, there were 3 Qi practitioners, especially the Confucian scholar, whose realm was unfathomable. The rest of the boy in Tsingyi, and the juvenile, who carried the qin and led the donkey, were not to be underestimated. Could it be that what the 2 people said before was not a lie? After 3,000 years, if there really is a Qi trainer on the road, is it the Earth Immortal who started? He had just recovered from the ant cultivator in the Dragon Palace, and finally regained a little confidence in the sword cultivator of the 5 realms, and it disappeared again. He resisted the discomfort in his heart, and he had to bow his head under the eaves, and took the initiative to say, the surname is by Ming Deng, the Taoist name is Merciful Lord. Jing Hao squinted and smiled and praised, good Dao name, Jing is a fickle lord. Especially someone like a Daoist who is born with roots and has a Dao name of Mad Lord, it is especially suitable. A young Taoist priest who suddenly appeared, wearing a lotus crown, stood behind Chen Lingjun, his hands folded and his arms folded on the head of the Tsingyi boy, full of exclamation, "Wow, this is not the top spot on Lixiaozu Mountain, immortal master Jing Hao Jing, why did you come to Bao Ping continent? You are very leisurely and elegant." Jing Hao was like a thunderbolt from the blue, stunned and speechless. This Chen Lingjun, in addition to being a brother to Chen Xianjun, is actually so familiar with Bai Yujing headmaster Lu. Chen Lingjun felt extremely aggrieved in his heart, he reached out and wiped his face. Then Lu Chen waved to the top of the mountain, "Mr. Xiao Mo." Xiao Mo smiled and nodded, and came to Chen Lingjun and Lu Chen's side. Jing Hao was stunned, he didn't notice the chi of headmaster Lu, how could there be an expert hiding so close to him? At this moment, Bai Deng only felt that he should return to the dojo and stay there. The world outside is extremely dangerous. Knowing that Xiaomo is nearby, and seeing Xiaomo standing beside him, that's two different things. Chen Lingjun patted Lu Chen's hand and warned, "Well, hurry up." Lu Chen was indifferent and said with a smile, "I don't know, I met Mr. Mo earlier, and we have a good relationship." Xiao Mo smiled and nodded lightly, acquiescing to Dao Chong Lu's statement, but at the same time, Xiao Mo also signaled Chen Lingjun to relax with his eyes. Chen Lingjun put his arms around his chest, "I'm too lazy to know you in general." Lu Chen turned his head to look at the top of the mountain again, stretched out his arms and waved vigorously, "It's Miss Xia, right? This way, you and Mr. Mo are a match made in heaven. Next time you must drink your wedding wine." On a tree on the top of the mountain, a girl in a sable hat stood on the branch and grinned, "It's still a matter of character." The old scholar Lu Chenchu sighed, "Miss Xia, don't talk nonsense. It's clear that there is a misunderstanding. The 8 characters are only one swipe, unrequited love." Xia Go suffered from the lack of reading. She never heard Zhang Jiaolu's pun. She smiled brightly, but thought it was a beautiful word. She nodded to Lu Chen, and then shifted her gaze to Xiao Mo, said in a soft tone, "I'll go back first, I'll wait for you to have supper together." Mr. Zhu said that when he was outside, he had to give his man some face. When he got home and closed the door, what should he do? Lu Chen restrained his smile, "Mr. Mo, I'm so lucky." Xiao Mo said helplessly, "It's okay." Lu Chen patted the Tsingyi boy on the head and joked, "Uncle Chen, this Jing Hao, Qinggong Tai Bao, do you recognize it?" Chen Lingjun still put his arms around his chest. "Do you think him a fool?" "Of course, such a famous old immortal on the mountain will recognize him, but it's just the kind of recognition that I recognize him and he doesn't recognize me." Bai Xian, who drank wolfberry tea every day at a young age, compiled a hero score, and Chen Lingjun was not idle, and secretly wrote a booklet that he named Passers-by. Listed the list of people on the mountain who can pass by and don't know each other with him. Finally, Chen Lingjun sorted out such a secret book for walking around the rivers and lakes in the future. Among them are Qinggong Tai Bao, Jing Hao, Jing Lao Shinxian from Lixiaozu. According to some mountain rumors recorded in Shanshui Dibao, they know a lot about magic techniques. It never occurred to me that this guy pretending to be a scholar is actually that far away, unattainable Jing Hao. It seems that the encounter tonight was indeed a chance encounter. Chen Lingjun was relieved, and he had a big talk with Jing Lao Shinxian. It was barely a familiar face. If he went to Lixiaozu in the future, wouldn't he need an extra amulet? At least the Qinggongshan cultivator, for the sake of this incense love, has to sell himself a few thin noodles. You can't always follow the way of the monk of the Thunder God's house in Beiju Luzhou. Forget it, even if you meet a Qi trainer from Qinggong Mountain on the road, you still pretend that you don't know each other. It's better not to meet if you can. Otherwise, it is estimated that the other party still thinks that he is bragging and does not draft drafts, but it is easy to cause troubles. I don't know what Jing Hao was thinking at the moment, but the juvenile Yu Pujing who was standing under the plum blossom tree was completely stunned. That young Taoist priest, wearing a lotus crown, was full of randomness and disdain towards his master in his words. How could there be so many sky-high figures suddenly appearing in a place the size of a palm? Headmaster by Yujing Liu. Who is Mr. Xiao Mo? Who is Miss Xie, the mink hat? Lu Chen gloated and said, Uncle Chen, when you pass by Lixiazu in the future, you can't make a special trip to Qinggong Mountain, and chat a few more words with Jing Lao Shenxian at the wine table? Chen Lingjun smiled far-fetchedly and said, it must be. Jing Hao even felt a bucket of water in her heart, and she became more and more uncertain, and said subconsciously, it must be necessary. Both sides were embarrassed, and they could see the embarrassment in each other's tone and expression. And the point is that they don't even know what the other party is embarrassing about. Lu Qin said with a smile, it's like the first sight, it's called the first sight. In the Shimei River Waterhouse, there was another emergency military intelligence report to the river god, who had drank the high-brewed wine at the village school before, and hurriedly went to the river to find out. Good guy, sure enough, there was another empty jug floating on the water. The officials of the Shuifu and a large group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals who were watching the fun, who had previously experienced the power of such treasures, learned to be smart this time, and didn't even touch the jug. It's just that when Master River God carefully picked it up and shook it a few times, Gao Nyang was confused. It didn't seem to be the same as the previous jug, and there was no mystery. Those gang of officials and subordinates of the Water Mansion, but regardless of this, they raised their arms and shouted, the Master of the Water God, obtained the treasure twice in one day. Isn't this a miracle? Gao Nyang kept calm, put the jug into his sleeve, raised his hand slightly, and pressed it a few times, signaling that the fierce generals of the Shuifu should be calm and low-key. The white-haired boy who slept unintentionally in the long night at Luopao Mountain was on the side of Jiantai, and he was looking for Guo Mengzhu to develop a relationship and friendship. As the first editor of Luopao Mountain, the white-haired boy is now fighting high, thinking that if he can join hands with Xia Guo, and if there is a Guo Alliance leader, he will be an independent sect in Luopao Mountain. The girl and the white-haired boy were sitting on a branch, each swaying their legs and swaying. Before coming here, they did not treat themselves badly. The two worked together to make 2 casseroles of bridge-crossing rice noodles in the kitchen. Guozhuzhou was full of hiccups and was teaching the white-haired boy his unique experience in the arena. On the branches on both sides, there were 2 empty small casserole pots beside them. The taste is indeed average, not to blame the ingredients, but to their cooking skills, anyway, don't blame anyone. Walking through the rivers and lakes, don't panic when you encounter things. The white-haired boy nodded vigorously and rolled his eyes secretly. As a result, after reading Guozhuzhi's words, he was very satisfied with the white-haired boy's appetite. Hurry up and run away. The white-haired boy's eyes lit up, he applauded with all his strength, cheered loudly, and did not forget to continue to encourage Guozhuzhou to participate in the grand event. Guo Alliance Lord, you know that I am a person who is very good in every possible way, but only one point is the most outstanding, that is, never slapping the beard. It is really a good match with Guo's leader. It's a pity that you are not our leader. Guozhuzhou wondered, do you have a personal grudge with senior sister Pei? The white-haired boy shook his head and said, there is absolutely no conscience in heaven and earth. Guozhuzhou was silent for a moment and asked, you pretend to be happy every day, will you be really happy one day? The white-haired boy looked sad and twitched the corners of his mouth. Life has many divergent paths in the north and south, and things are like a spring dream without a trace. Back then, when thousands of miles searched for Feng Ho, there was no use in being a scholar. The white-haired boy clasped the back of his head with both hands, feeling melancholy, really melancholy. Guizhou stretched out his hand to hold the white-haired boy's head, pressed it, and nodded. What do you want? It must be possible. In Luopao Mountain, in a small house, many people gathered here in the middle of the night, and everyone was very relaxed. Chief Shou Fei's private house on the mountain, how luxurious and luxurious it is, the white jade pavement, the immortal spirit. I really want people to cross the threshold, and they dare not step when they enter the yard. But here, the courtyard in front of the steps is just a flat and compacted yellow soil. In the early years, there was a female nun who was as famous as Jiang Shangjin in Tonggishao. She once came here as a guest and had a special liking for this courtyard. Jiang Shangjin thought about it, but he still couldn't understand it. That Huang Ting was definitely not a fuel-efficient lamp, and he was very arrogant. Zhu Lian didn't hide it, but said that he just gave her a handwritten Taoist scripture, and Miss Huang sat here and read the book for a while. That's how an old cook treats guests, that's all. At that time, Chief Shou stood under the eaves and looked at the courtyard outside the steps. He quickly wanted to understand the joints and was amazed. A Taoist book, a rattan chair, Huang Ting facing Huang Ting, and watching Huang Ting under the moon. There are a lot of people gathered here to chat tonight. In fact, the main reason is to listen to Jing Daifeng's anecdotes about the colorful world. Jing Daifeng's words are witty, like a kind of talent. Things that pass through his mouth can always attract people's gimmicks and make the listeners smile. With the support of the old cook, the same thing is even more interesting. In the audience just now, the men included Taoist Xian Wei, Chen Lingjun, and Wufu Zhongqin. Among the women were Xiago, Pei Xiang, the lord of the Fox Kingdom, and Gao Jun, the contemporary head of the Hushan school. Before, Chen Pingon took the initiative to visit Hushan school and took her to leave the Lotus Root blessed land. Gao Jun originally planned to return to his hometown soon, so he just went to Piyun Mountain with Wei Shanjun at first. She wanted to know more about this magnificent world. She was even more reluctant to leave Luopao Mountain, which made the scheduled trip delayed again and again. It's just that Jing Dafeng has left at this moment, and went down the mountain with Xian Wei. Xiao Mo took Chen Lingjun out to the boundary of the Shimei River, and then Xiago also sneaked over, just let Mr. Zhu prepare a late-night snack, and when she and Xiaomo came back to eat, there was no need to rush to cook. Zhu Lian smiled and agreed. Since he had nothing to do, and Pei Xiang took the lead, Zhu Lian was lying on the rattan chair and casually said something to relieve the boredom along with her topic. Cultivation is never just about the mountains, it is always about you and me. Between a man and a woman, being a husband and wife is a predestined relationship, and it is nothing more than a separation of evil and good. In the next life, the two sides will live with each other. They are always dissatisfied and feel that they owe each other. So poor, and rich, whether they have money or not, their life is always unhappy. A slightly lighter evil fate, they parted in the middle of nowhere. There is not much resentment between the two sides, the relationship is shallow, and the relationship is made. Only good karma can achieve mutual success and grow old together. So this so-called practice is just comparing the heart with the heart, turning the bad karma into a good karma, and continuing the good karma in this life as the good karma in the next life. Then no matter what identity we meet in the next life, we will meet again. If you see an old friend, you will feel joy in your heart. Therefore, if a husband and wife want to work together and live a good life, it is a bad relationship at first, then it is easier to solve the bad relationship and form a good relationship, which is originally a good relationship. It's nothing but a continuation of goodwill. Pei Xiang smiled said, but in the world, there are not only love between men and women and the relationship between husband and wife. Zhu Lian put his hands on his stomach, patted the back of his left hand with his right hand, and said slowly, between parents and children, there is a debt. Children come to this world to collect debts with their parents or repay debts. If children come to collect debts, then parents should pay off the debt as soon as possible, the sooner the better. So you will find that in this world, some elders are obviously the wealthy door of loyal people, but there will be an unreasonable one. Prodigal son. If children come to repay their debts in this life, they should also be cherished and not squandered as parents. So you will also see some portals. No matter how mean and selfish those parents are, they are always willing to be filial, no matter how hard their life is, no matter how much they are wronged. Of course, there are also some children who can make an originally poor family prosper, and this is their debt repayment. Do you think there are many couples with children in the world? Do they really know how to be parents? In fact, they didn't know it at the beginning. Since it's the first time in this life, being a father and mother, or they haven't done it well. It's always a little confusing to prepare, or don't know what to do at all, so we don't leave home, and as early as in our own homes, we have joys and sorrows that we can cry and laugh for. Wufu Zhongqian, who was sitting alone on a bench, said in a low voice, "Mr. Zhu, what should I do? The truth must have a foothold, otherwise, if you know a bunch of big truths, there is no use other than walking on your back and getting involved." Men like to reason, and women pay attention to feelings. If a man can't understand the strange emotions that women seem to be inexplicable, unreasonable, and vexatious are a reason in themselves, and it will be difficult to explain their own reasoning. Hey! Not to mention that reasoning is just for the sake of winning and losing, and there is a winner and a loser. Both parties have been together for so long, and naturally, they will feel that the other party is a person who cannot communicate. The couples who share the same bed have no escape, no escape. Avoid, maybe in the end, there will only be two or two silences and their own grievances. All our misunderstandings about others and the world may come from 3 words, I think. Gao Jun thought for a moment and nodded lightly. The sable-cap girl who returned to Luo Pao Mountain was in high spirits. She sat down on the bamboo chair, gave a thumbs up, and exclaimed loudly, "Mr. Zhu, Tongda." Zhu Lian smiled and said, "Men need to think more." Xiago nodded vigorously. Mr. Zhu said it well. This sentence, this truth, is the best. If it is said that Xiago gradually changed his opinion and began to sincerely think that Luopa Mountain is a good place, then the old cook around him, Zhu Lian, takes half of the credit. Zhu Lian added, "Everyone is a lazy person and is naturally lazy, so I always feel that there is a certain truth in the book, or a sentence I heard from others, all those things that make people feel relaxed when they hear it. Reason, it is difficult to make our life better, good reason, but it will make us feel uncomfortable at first listening, and it will be more uncomfortable to do. So if Miss Xia listened so much to me tonight, at the end of the day, I just felt that this sentence was pleasing and reasonable, and I listened to it, and then I remembered this and forgot the rest. I might as well not listen and never hear a word." Xia Dog smiled awkwardly. Mr. Zhu Lao is indeed a profound Taoist. Xiao Mo, who had just returned to the hospital, smiled knowingly. Zhu Lian said rudely, "Little Mo, what are you laughing at, you fool?" Mr. Mo and Miss Xia, both of them are not partial to each other, and a bowl of water is level. Only then did Xiao Mo restrain his smile, but he couldn't help laughing again. Xiago blinked, hey, I can't stand it anymore. Today's Xiao Mo is really gentle, and seems to be a little more handsome than yesterday. Zhu Lian looked at the sky and was silent for a moment. A seemingly simple truth, how many truths does it need to support? It seems that there are too many things, just an addition with only one exact number, and without any one of them, the answer must be wrong. After returning to his senses, Zhu Lian smiled and said, "Let's not talk about other things outside the mountain. On our Luoluo Mountain, just one point, try not to be wrong to anyone." Of course, it is difficult to do so try to make everyone feel less wronged. Some grievances that are unwilling to speak to others come from not being able to respond to those around them. The voices of all kinds of expectations, longings, and wishes are like drums in my heart, resounding in my own world. The outside of the heart is dumb, and it is always silent. It is like a person who hoards his voice, but no one around him hears it. This person will become less and less fond of talking, and will remain silent until he becomes a mute. Zhu Lian said softly, "Don't be rational or unreasonable, right or wrong, you must be willing to tell others what you think, why you say something, why you do something, tell the other person frankly, that's how I am. Think about it, what do you think?" In fact, in this matter, in Luopa Mountain, the person who has done the best is Qin Lingjun, and perhaps the second is the owner of the mountain, Qin Pingon. For example, if Qin Lingjun encounters a grievance, he must be extremely aggrieved at the first time. He just thinks why his master is not by his side. As long as Qin Pingon returns home one day, he must complain. Another example is going to Dulu in Beiju Luzhou. At the critical juncture of Data's entrance to the sea, Qin Lingjun also thought about returning to Luopao Mountain, and was scolded by Qin Pingon. After the training, what should he do? "I was driven down the mountain, sir, I am still a hero." Lu Peishan has today's scene. Outsiders think that Qin Pingon likes to be a hands-off shopkeeper too much. Now that he has a big family business, he has lost his luck. Even some outside cultivators who were relatively familiar with Luopao Mountain felt that Zhu Lian, a character who could not move his nest, was doing something. This is the way for the expert to watch the door, and the outsider to watch the fun. Qin Pingon once sent a letter from home to Luopa Mountain and entrusted it to Wei Bo. On the envelope was written a line in small capital letters. Nuanshu personally opened, Pei Qian read the letter, and rice grains put away the envelope. When they received the letter back then, at the bamboo building, the three little heads touched each other, and Xiao Haitan repeatedly read the letter 3 times. Zhu Lian stood up, rubbed his hands together and smiled. "Let's make a late-night snack, Xiao Mo will help." Xiao Mo got up with a smile and started to help Mr. Zhu in the kitchen. He was already familiar with it. Everyone ate supper together at the same table. Pei Xiang and Gao Jun, who had never touched Yang Chenshui with their 10 fingers, helped clean up the dishes and returned to their residences. After the excitement was over, Zhu Lian was alone, lying back on the rattan chair, seemingly muttering to himself, "Lu Qin, do you think so?" On the other side of the wall, sitting Lu Qin, who didn't know when he came here, smiled and said, "There is a small problem, there are some truths, and reasonable people can't do it themselves. Even so, aren't those principles bad?" "If you say that, it seems to make some sense." Zhu Lian turned his head to the ground and snorted, "The branches of the lacquer garden road, the flower thief and the jade waste slave." Lu Qin couldn't help laughing. "It's weird, what are you scolding yourself for?" Lu Qin jumped and landed in the courtyard. He went straight to the rattan chair, and lay on it in the same posture as Zhu Lian. He said lazily, "Let's talk for a few years." Zhu Lian sat on the steps, put his hands in his sleeves, and said indifferently, "What do you want to talk about?" Lu Qin smiled and closed his eyes. Zhu Lian looked up. In an instant, in the darkness of the night, there seemed to be hundreds of millions of sentient beings' dreams in the human world, like lanterns that were densely clustered, colorful and slowly rising. Under the eaves of the village school, the old scholar lay comfortably on the rattan chair, while Qin Pingon sat on the bamboo chair beside him, shaking the palm fan gently. Zhao Shuxia and Ning Ji sat on the other side. The old scholar smiled and asked, "Ning Ji, I told you a lesson earlier, do you understand?" Ning Ji shook his head and said with a sullen face, "Master Patriarch, I almost don't understand." The old scholar laughed and said, "It's okay, let your husband explain it to you in some vernacular." Chen Pingan smiled and explained it to Ning Ji in some simple and easy-to-understand words. Ning Ji kept the two statements in mind. Occasionally, if there was something he still couldn't understand, he would ask her husband, and Chen Pingan would explain it in another way. The old man listened and fell asleep again, snoring lightly. Zhao Xuxia and Ning Ji walked lightly and went to the kitchen to lay the floor. Only Chen Pingan was still sitting there, silently accompanying his husband. In the open space outside the school, there are faint traces of Mongolian children dancing squares. Probably childhood is a carefree square jumping, the square is your home, and the square is the world outside. With this kind of Taoist crown system, which is not common on the mountain, it can be determined that its legal lineage must come from Baiyujing Nanhuiqing. Zhang Qiong is a little better than Qi Gu. I have never seen such a veritable mountain cultivator in my life, let alone getting along so closely. After thinking about it, I cupped my fists and said, Zhang from Tianchao County. Qiong, I have seen Chao Tianjun. In the vast world, in addition to the few Taoist temples of the Shingao sect whose incense has withered almost to nothing, there are only two Taoist veins, the Aquarius Island Lingfei Temple, and the Beiju Luzhou Qingliang sect. Taoist priests are qualified to wear this Taoist crown. Qing Qian and Zhang Qiong, two golden elixir and earth immortals, had both participated in the war, so they recognized the identity of this Taoist at a glance. He was the old master of Lingfei Temple in the south, Tianjun Chao Rong, and he was even more so. He is one of the direct disciples of Baiyujing headmaster Lu who stayed in the Haoran world. Just before Lingfei Temple was elevated from Taoist Temple to Taoist Palace, Chao Rong stepped down as the master of the temple and went down the mountain to wander. Chao Rong bowed his head and returned the salute with a smile. He didn't despise Zhang Qiong just because he was just a Jindan cultivator. He smiled and said, I've seen Dao Yu Zhang. Especially the Qing Feng Qing Qian, who met this Taoist heavenly monarch who had been brilliant in the battle of the old dragon city, without saying a word, performed a rare Taoist ceremony. 3 ceremonies and 9 kowtows, the young-looking King Xingguo protector of the country, knelt on the ground and bowed his hands to the ground, but his head did not touch the bottom. Qing Qian knelt down and said aloud, the contemporary head of the Jinkei faction, Qing Qian, who is on the Green Peak, pays a visit to Patriarch Zheng. Chao Rong is a pseudonym, his real name is Zheng Zhe, and his Taoist name is Tian Rui. Zheng Zhe, who was born in Chidi, used to be a poetry collector. These secrets will only be revealed on the Golden Jade genealogy of Lingfei Temple. Lingfei Temple has always been strict, and who would dare to disclose such secrets of the ancestors to the outside world? It is only because the Jinkei faction and Lingfeiguan have such an incense love that Qing Qian, who is the current head of the family, can only know the inside story through the word of mouth of the heads of the previous generations. Chao Rong stretched out a palm, raised it a little, and said indifferently, get up. In the face of Qing Qian, a disciple and grandson of his own Taoism, Chao Rong was not so amiable. At the same time, Chao Rong said in his heart, Qing Qian, just now on the side of Pomo Peak, the head teacher Zun personally issued a decree to allow you, the founder of the Jinkei sect, to restore the identity of the Taoist priest of Lingfeiguan. In the future, Yu Jinkei sect and Lingfeiguan, even if it is a family, the ancestral home is in Baiyujing Nanhuiqing. Facing the unmasked patriarch Xingzhe, Qing Qian bowed his head without touching the ground, not because of lack of respect for this Chao Tianjun, but because the incense of the Jinkei faction has lasted for so many years, and he has never been able to communicate with Lingfei. Watching recognized the ancestors and returned to the ancestry, so when he saw Xingzhe, Qing Qian would salute like this. Chao Rong naturally benefited from this. Jin Dan Qing Qian is indeed a manufacturable material. Qing Qian was horrified when he heard that Master Zhang Zun also appeared in Splashing Imo Peak. Rao is Qing Qian, whose Taoist heart is as tough as a rock, and he can't help but be very excited. There are waves in the heart lake, but he is trying his best to stabilize the Taoist heart. He still looks solemn on the surface, facing the direction of Splashing Mofeng, and kneels again. This time it's the forehead that touches the ground, making a thud. Chao Rong nodded in approval. To say that tonight in the Hehuan Mountains, this turmoil of great meritorious wars, at its root, is actually an internal strife that occurred in one's own Taoism. Qing Qian is the person who respects the teacher the most. It is only because Xiao Fuyang, who was removed from the genealogy of the Jin Ke faction, is entrenched in Hehuan Mountain, and he dares to act arrogantly. Qing Qian only had the murderous and cruel words, "Whoever obeys without this way will die for his sins." Lu Qin chatted with Chao Rong about this casually before. Although he made fun of it, he complained that Qing Qian, a little bastard, had caused him a lot of trouble. But Chao Rong knew very well that Master still had some appreciation for Qing Qian. Chao Rong glanced at Lu Mo. According to Master's statement, 3,000 years ago, she used to be a grooming maid beside an old friend, and she was extremely loyal. This life is a female warrior. Just because Lu Mo was in the poor alley of Fengla town, Lu Qin, who was reunited after a long absence but did not know each other, let out a light sigh. With the roots of the earth immortal with golden branches and jade leaves, he has the capital to transfer to practice immortality. Regarding Lu Mo, and the Shi Yuan in the Dragon King Temple in Baihua Lake, Master has made arrangements. Especially the small town girl with the Taoist name Qingni, the Master is quite attentive. As for how to end it, after all, it is Chao Rong, a disciple, who has to share his worries for the Master. Qing Qian stood up and remained silent. He didn't even dare to speculate where Zhang Jiaolu was at the moment. Chao Rong continued to say in his heart, "There is no way for good or bad, but people call them by themselves. The teacher in charge is here in person. It is because of your sincerity and your spirit." Qing Qian bowed his head silently, as a sincere return to the words of praise from the ancestors. It's just that Chao Rong's so-called "you too" made the very smart Qing Qian instantly understand that on the Hehuan mountainside, it was probably not his turn to clean up the door. Before Chao Rong was on the top of Pomo Peak, he had used his magical powers to watch Xiao Fuyang's moral appearance from a distance. Somewhat dragon-like. In terms of cultivating aptitude, Xiao Fuyang is indeed excellent, and looking at the mountains and rivers of the Aquarius continent, it is considered excellent. Zhang Kaiqin and the group of worshipping Qi Gu, after learning the prominent identity of the Taoist priest, hurriedly bowed to Chao Tianjun. Chao Rong smiled again and returned the salute to everyone. Chao Rong said, "The soldiers and horses of all countries have been carefully planning for a long time. The encirclement and suppression of Hehuan Mountain is already an arrow from the string. The matter has come to this point, and the poor road does not dare to let you retreat, so the forces of all parties can follow the instructions. The given itinerary, all the way to Fengla town at the foot of Hehuan Mountain. However, on Hehuan Mountain, Xiangjuan of Lingfei Palace, Wen Xinxian, Jingxian Temple Xingzi, all three of them are already in Fanwan Mansion, and they will give King Xingguo a gift at that time. His Majesty the Emperor and Mrs. Zhang from Tianchao County explained that Pindao will stay here until noon, and if you are not satisfied with the result, no matter who you are, you can come here to ask Pindao for an explanation. This is equivalent to a Taoist heavenly monarch making a final conclusion on this storm." Chao Rong's words were extremely polite, saying, "Don't dare," not to mention that old Jianghu like Zhang Kaiqin and Qi Gu didn't believe it. I'm afraid even young girls like Jin Luo and Nenai Qing who had no experience would not believe it. Qing Qian naturally would not have any objections. Zhang Qiong frowned slightly, but said nothing. "If you want to blame it, you can blame the poor Lingfei Palace. The discipline of the children is not strict, so Zhao Fuyang's actions are made. Having said this, Chao Rong laughed at himself, as written in a book on ghosts and monsters that is popular in the market at the foot of the mountain. It seems that there are ghosts with roots and ways to come, and when something happens, there is a way out. Zhang Qiong smiled, and the old man's brows stretched a little. Zhao Fuyang has been away from the Jin Ke faction for many years, not to mention the fact that the Jin Ke faction is not the descendant of Lingfei Palace, so it is impossible to blame it on the head of Lingfei Palace. Chao Tianjun was able to say that, which means that he took the initiative to take responsibility for the smoky Hehuan mountain, which was considered kind. Chao Rong continued, next, Lingfei Palace will open a dojo here. The size of the dojo will depend on what you will discuss in the future. The palace master Xiangjuan is going to spend money to buy some hills with you. As for the price, the two sides will negotiate. If you can't agree, let it go, don't force it. If you can negotiate and the sale is done, that's the best thing. In the future, the dojo will join several surrounding countries, including Qingxing Kingdom, to see the fate of the Dharma, and receive disciples. Zhang Qiong breathed a sigh of relief. Chao Tianjun and Lingfei Palace's behavior was indeed sincere, and it was regarded as a few steps for the imperial court of several countries and their Tianchao County Zhang family. Otherwise, Chao Rong doesn't have to show his face at all, just let the ancestor of Shengjuan quietly take Zhao Fuyang and others away. Where does he need to talk to him here? Zhang Qiong, with a little bit of nonsense. Chao Rong said in a heartfelt voice, Friend Zhang, there is an elixir here in Pindao, which is of little use. Xiangjuan will bring it to fellow Daoist Zhang later. Zhang Qiong was greatly surprised. I won't be rewarded without merit, is this Chao Tianjun? Chao Rong's so-called little usefulness, even if Chao Rong didn't reveal the name of the medicine pill, Zhang Qiong was very clear that this unprovoked gift was definitely not light. To put it horribly, the general panacea, the dignified Taoist heavenly monarch, the direct disciple of Lu Zhangjiao, can you give it away? Chao Rong explained with a smile, Pin Dao has a friend who admires Zhang Daoyu very much. He said that the more Earth Immortal seniors like Zhang Daoyu, in Aquarius, the better. He also said that a family has a family style, and the wider the family, the more you can influence the atmosphere of other surnames. In addition, Xiangjuan has not had much experience going down the mountain, and he has not dealt with the imperial court many times, so she is inevitably inexperienced. When she opens a dojo here in the future, she will be neighbors with the Zhang family in Tianchao County. Distant relatives are not as good as close neighbors, since ancient times, both up and down the mountain. If you have Lao Daoyu Zhang, you should give Xiangjuan a little more advice. You might as well say a few ugly words to her, lest Xiangjuan rely on Taoism and realm to do things, no matter what, 8 face leaking. Zhang Qiong hesitated for a while, no longer being hypocritical, and smiled. Then I have the cheek to accept this heavy gift, and I would like to thank Chao Tianjun here. It's just that Lao Jindan is inevitably surprised. Since he is Chao Tianjun's friend, why would he call himself senior? Thinking of the previous trip between Zhang Kaiqin and Hong Yangbua, as well as the hospitality of Luopao Mountain, Zhang Qiong, the old golden pill, knew Yai when he heard the string, and immediately had a guess in his heart. But in fact, Chao Rong just found a reason to give away the medicine pill. To send charcoal in the snow for Zhang Qiong, whose birthday is approaching, and add icing on the cake to the young hidden official in Luopa Mountain. Probably this is the reason why Chao Rong is so popular on the top of the mountain. Zhang Qiong said, the younger generation thinks about it and thinks about it, but if you don't spit it out, you still have to ask Chao Tianjun a question that will hurt the scenery. Chao Rong has already guessed the other party's thoughts, and said frankly, Zhao Fuyang will be taken by Xiangjuan to Lingfei Palace to think about it behind closed doors. If nothing else, he will become a direct disciple of Pin Dao. At the same time, Chao Rong isolated a side of the world, and then took out a long scroll of time that could be said to be a fake from his sleeve. It was a parting gift from the master Lu Qin, and he just told Chao Rong to show it to Zhang Qiong. In this picture, there is neither Qin Ren, a young man with a sword on his back, nor a young Taoist priest holding a green bamboo stick to climb the mountain. Zhao Fuyang successfully rolled up the mountain and turned from a snake into a mountain dragon. The Taoist priest Yu Chuanji also entered the nascent soul realm. Zhang Qiong finally relieved after reading the time travel chart alone. Junior no longer has any problems. Chao Rong put away the picture scroll, removed the magical power, and laughed in his heart. That's good. Then Chao Rong turned his head to look at the female warrior, Lu Mo. There is an opportunity on the mountain waiting for you at the Longwang Temple in Baihua Lake. You can go there or not, for half a year, and it won't be out of date. In the end, Chao Rong looked away, looking at the dark and thin girl, but he laughed in his heart. Your name is Ni Qin, right? You have a relationship with the poor master, and the master has an order, so let me take you up the mountain. Cultivation, are you willing? The girl asked timidly, dare to ask who Chao Tianjin's master is, have I met him? Chao Rong smiled and said, you have already met, the person you think is the least likely to be him. In the human world, there are people who are truly invincible and fighting, and Huayang Palace is so lonely, so taciturn, even if they don't speak, they can reject people who are thousands of miles away. There is also the sage of ritual, the headmaster of Baiyujing, Ko Ming, and Zhao Tianlai, the celestial master of Longhu Mountain. There is still Zheng in the middle of Beidasheng, and Chuiyu, the embroidered tiger, seems to be an existence that everyone wants to stay away from. All in all, each has its own distinct character and style. But there are also excellent talkers like his master Lu Qin, and the old scholar, Xian Du Wan Sun Huaizhong. The girl's next question surprised Chao Rong. Chao Tianjun, who is the young man beside him? It's the one who wears straw sandals on his back. Chao Rong smiled and said, Chen Pingan, the owner of Luopao Mountain, is also the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. The girl opened her mouth wide, her face full of disbelief. It's him. How is this possible? That juvenile is clearly a liar who speaks and does things indifferently. But if it's really him, isn't he the sword immortal whose sister Zhou and Uncle Lu recite over and over and drink more wine every time they mention each other's names? I remember that she had heard it a lot before, and couldn't help but joke, saying the name Chen Pingan was simply the best appetizer. In the Fanwan mansion of Hehuan Mountain, there was a thunderstorm on the ground, causing many wild cultivators and gods in the temple to dare not breathe. Just because in the side hall where the number of guests is relatively small, the master of Lingfei Palace, Xiangjuan Patriarch, removed her blindfold, revealed her identity, and started to clear the door in person. Zhao Fuyang of Hehuan Mountain's dense house and Yu Chuanji of Fenwan House, both of them were wild cultivators from spirits and monsters. They were captured without any resistance. They led a few children and knelt together in front of the Patriarch of Xiangjuan, whose Taoist name was Dongting. In the eyes of a crowd of mixed guests, this is a normal and sensible choice. A Hehuan Mountain is just two immortals. It is really true for the last Taoist who was able to open up the battlefield site as his own dojo. June, it's not enough to see it all. If you are stubbornly resisting, what will be the end other than the ashes in the blink of an eye? There is no need for anyone to remind. In the Hehuan Mountains, they all learned from Zhao Fuyang's family, kneeling in different flower halls, at the critical moment when the needle was dropped. I do not know which heroic hero was full of courage, and unexpectedly burped. It's a pity that no one dared to look up. They can only identify the position by listening to the sound. It seems that it is the side hall where the ancestor of Xiangjuan is located. At this moment, Xiangjuan has an extra ledger in his hands, which is presented by Yu Chuanji with both hands, to bring together the heroes of the Hehuan Mountains, which should be of the same spirit, together with the Baihua Lake Shuiyue Mansion, and these years before and after the saddle, they can be said to be conscientious. Li Dang, the of the Wooding Mountain, has done a lot of shameful things on a certain day, a certain month, a certain year. Xiang Jun's face was cold. He quickly finished reading, closed the ledger, and threw it at the fox's feet, and said indifferently, "Go back and take the initiative to hand over this book to those imperial courts and let them deal with it. You should be killed, the rest should not be punished by death, those who should be arrested, and those who should be collected should be collected." The young Taoist priest sat in the same position, with Erlang's legs crossed, his teeth grinned, and he was picking his teeth with a bamboo stick. Just now was this daring guy who burped. Xiangjuan finished chatting with Zhao Fuyang in advance. Because she was afraid of scaring Zhao Fuyang, she did not dare to say that the patriarch Lu Zhangjiao had already been to Hehuan Mountain. Xiangjuan only said that her master was watching the movement here not far away. Zhao Fuyang temporarily served as an anonymous disciple of Tianjun Chao Rong, and practiced in Lingfei Palace as a guild. As for whether he can enter the hall in the future, and eventually become the direct descendant of Tianjun, it depends on Zhao Fuyang's destiny method. Xiangjuan said, "The three-way seal, return it to the Qingxing Kingdom's court as soon as possible." Zhao Fuyang, the unruly loose immortal hero, put his hands on the ground and his head on the ground, and said solemnly, "Abide by the decree of the palace master." Leaving aside anonymity, according to seniority, Xiangjuan is even Zhao Fuyang's senior sister, but after all, she still has the identity of the palace master. Before that, the two maids who served tea and water in Fanwan Mansion, Yu Yiyou and Yu Rongyu, were really taken by that nonsense year. The light Taoist priest was right, and the words became a prophecy. They each got a piece of great fortune, and it really is the time and the 8 characters match, when there is good luck. It turned out that Yu Yi was selected by the ancestor of Xiangjuan, and immediately he was considered to be a cultivator of Lingfei Palace. As for who to worship as a teacher, it is to be determined. When he returns to Lingfei Palace, there will be a meeting of the ancestors' hall, and we will see. Yu Rongyu was punished by Jingxianin, at first glance, and became her direct disciple. In this way, they have all obtained the blessing of a fairy family that can be called a step to the sky. He was able to rise from the humble and grassy Shanzi Yeshio to a genealogy cultivator, and he also became the patriarch of a sept and Taoist palace, and a direct descendant of an earth immortal. It's something they can't even dream of. The two female cultivators couldn't help crying with joy on the spot, but they looked at each other in surprise while they were surprised. Was the mouth of the young Taoist priest opened? The shabby Taoist priest, leaning against the back of the chair and picking his teeth with bamboo sticks, smiled at them and winked. The palace master Bai Mao from the Qingbai mansion in Wedgeling Ridge is very envious of this. He can't wait to let the Xianjun patriarch see his roots. Is it a good material for cultivation? Palace Master Bai is not very demanding, not to mention it's a heirloom, and it's okay to be a handyman disciple of the outer sect. This ghost in the form of a scribe in a crane cloak was completely unaware that there was no one who made the greatest creation tonight, and it was himself. That picture book, which was almost bought and sold by Daoist Lu, who thought he had been taken advantage of by Palace Master Bai, actually cost him 2 snowfalls. One-handed payment and one-handed delivery. There are 2 pages of the picture album, and 2 more golden letters. Lu Chen seems to be bragging, saying that more than 1,000 words are incomparable, but it can be said that there is no doubt that the most beautiful between heaven and earth pure, undead side. The previous Taoist book pointed directly at Jin Dan. When Bai Mao becomes an earth immortal, it will be a matter of course, and when I see the content of the middle part, the Taoist method directly points to Yupu. After all, it is the root of the cultivation of Bai Guzhenren, one of the candidates in the Qingming world. Even if you are an Ascension Realm cultivator, who would dare to underestimate it? Therefore, Zhang Jiaolu is away from home and can eat and drink spicy food everywhere, all relying on his superb acting skills. At this time, in the stomach, apart from several pots of the secret brewed wine from the Fanwan mansion, the one with the most bitterness is probably the Hu Jun Zhang Xiangdao of Shuyue mansion. It was a good matchmaking and marriage, but they had just walked out of the house with their front feet a few days ago. On the other hand, the young man with the name Dragon Gill was quite timid. When he was dragged to his knees by his parents, he still didn't know the stakes and interests, and he didn't forget to take a quick look at Xiangjun's appearance. Xiangjun's eyes shifted. First he threw the pickled young man flying with a sleeve, and passed out on the spot. The latter was embedded in the wall like a nail. She beckoned to the goddess of Falling Kite Mountain again. Her face was a little calmer, and she said with a smile, "Come here to talk, I have something to discuss with you." The mountain goddess was trembling and moved quickly to come here. Her face was pale and colorless. I don't know why Dongting Zhenjuan, a high-altitude mountain immortal, would bring her out alone. When she got to the side hall, she was about to kneel and kowtow. Xiangjuan raised his hand, stopped the other party's big gift, smiled and said in a questioning tone, "At the Hong's court in Yunshao in the south of Aquarius, there is still a shortage of one somewhere now. The mountain god, but his status is not high, according to the rules set by the Confucian temple today. He is just entering the stream. Would you like to condescend to fill the vacancy there?" The goddess of the temple mountain was dazed at first, and then her eyes were full of tears. She gave 1,000 blessings to the ancestor Xiangjuan, who was extraordinarily generous, and said in a trembling voice, "The slave is willing, willing to the extreme." In fact, Xiangjuan didn't know why Master made such an arrangement. Of course, the master of Xiangjuan, Chao Rong, also did not know why he made a special trip to deliver a decree for this mountain goddess. The sword-backed boy and the young woman with the ball-shaped hair in a bun walked out of the side hall while almost everyone bowed their heads. Bai Mao was pulled up by the young Taoist priest, and said in a low voice, "Brother Bai, if you don't run now, you will wait. If you stay here to drink, only the fine wine will be settled in the autumn." How could Bai Mao dare to act like a tenant at this time? He made up his mind, and his was rooted, and he was determined not to move his nest. He reached out and tried to break off Dao Changlu's fingers, but he was still dragged by the young Taoist and stumbled to his feet, and walked straight to the door. I said so vigorously. Bai Mao's mind was blank, just repeated silently in his heart, "No one could see me." Xiangjun didn't stop this, since it wasn't on Yu Chunzi's booklet, it was just a few passers-by who happened to pass by, so there was no need to worry about it. As for the ghost in Wedge Mountain, according to the records on the booklet, it has never done anything evil, and in the Hehuan Mountains, it is an outlier. The young Taoist priest arrived at the door of the side hall, turned his head and carefully hooked his fingers towards Wen, and provoked again, "Come here, you have no guts. If you have the ability, go outside and pick up a spacious space and have a hand with the Taoist master." Wen stood up carefully and said in his heart, "Palace master, I really can't stand this bastard." Xiangjun reminded, "You pay attention to the weight of your hands, and remember not to hinder him from walking down the mountain." She was a bit strange. The other party knew her identity. As long as she was not a heartless person, she could guess the identity of Wen Jing's Taoist priest in Lingfei Palace. Dare to provoke Wen carefully. What do you want? If it was normal, Xiangjun might still be a little careful, lest he encounter the kind of strange people who hide their names and like to play games in the world. I'm really not afraid that the other party's intentions are wrong, so let one carefully weigh the depth of the other party's Taoism or the importance of boxing. As soon as one carefully heard this statement from Patriarch Xiangjuan, "What's the point of it?" he would sit back in the chair. Unexpectedly, after the young monk walked out of the door, he leaned back and stuck out a head. "Master Dao, I traveled from south to north, but I still saw you shrinking like a turtle." Wen carefully got up with a smile and rubbed his fists, "Then practice your hands and see how much you have." I saw the sword-carrying boy and the young woman slowly walk outside the Fanwan mansion in the hand-handling veranda. Lu Qin backed away, facing the martial arts master Wen Qin, punching non-stop, humming, "Don't cry for your father and mother in a while." Wen squinted his eyes carefully and said with a smile, "It's easy to say." Lu Qin learned the tone and demeanor of the other party, squinted and smiled, "It's easy to talk." Wen Shen was a little convinced. How could such a slutty person not shed tears without seeing the coffin? If the patriarch Xiangjuan had not reminded him to wake up, he would leave it in the past and be met by Wen Jingshan in the rivers and lakes at the foot of the mountain. "Whoever you are, lie on the ground obediently and wait to be carried away." Lu Qin just walked backwards all the way, and said with a hilarious smile, "Young man, do you know what your problem is? It's you who punches. It seems that you never have murderous intentions, but your murderous intention is too heavy, you can't hide it. It's inappropriate, very inappropriate. So young people like you, don't hurry up and suffer early, you will have to suffer a lot in the future. If I were your patriarch's patriarch, I would definitely meet you as soon as we met. They'll just scold you, and then beat you hard, so that you know what it means to be someone else, and there is a heaven outside." Wen carefully sneered and said, "Since I can stand by Jinxian An's tortured Z tonight and stand beside Xiangjuan patriarch, you little bald donkey, don't you understand, who is my patriarch's patriarch?" The other party choked for a moment and asked tentatively, "Then let's stop fighting. Go out and make money with peace." When Xan smiled and said, "Don't tell me, since we are all in the world, we should know the saying that we don't know each other. Maybe after practicing, we will become friends. What do you think?" That man was as thick-skinned as a wall, and he actually said, I think it's safer for us to go back to our own homes." "It's safe to say that, goodbye." Wen carefully pretended to run forward on purpose, and then handed a punch forward, so scared that the guy turned around and ran, smearing oil on the soles of his feet, and surpassing the two in front of him, he ran away in a blink of an eye. Pei Qian gathered together and asked, "Master?" Chen Pingon said in his heart, "He has always been this virtue, just get used to it." Regarding this headmaster Lu, the saying that no one can beat him is absolutely true. Pei Qian nodded, this one behind him. Chen Pingon smiled and said, "Since this fellow can't control his eyes, he has only had to drink 6 times. I am limited by this avatar, otherwise I would have taught him to be a good man. Master Wen is not the only one who is good at this. When you go outside, you can learn boxing skills with him." Pei Qian grinned. "Ha, sure enough, when it comes to keeping accounts, Master is still the best at it." Pei Qian asked suspiciously, did this one carefully notice that Palace Master Bai was gone? Chen Pingon explained, Lu Qin didn't want him to know, and he naturally didn't know. Pei Qian nodded. "Maybe you want to not be in the same situation as Wen carefully, at least to be at the first level. Or is it still not enough even if God arrives?" Arriving at the Bayou Square outside the gate of Fanwan Mansion, Wen Jingshan was surprised to find that the guy with the word "slappy" written all over his face, and the ghost with the crane and cloak disappeared together. This made Wen Jingjin instantly tense his heartstrings, reminding himself not to capsize in the gutter. "It's not that I'm worried, it's just that it doesn't sound good. Just like that Chao Ci obviously won the question boxing, but the result was almost the same as not winning or even losing." Pei Qian walked to the center of the square, turned around, stood still, and smiled, "Let's learn from each other." Wen carefully distracted himself, but still couldn't find any clues, and said with a smile, "Why bother? A pretty good-looking young woman, especially a young woman with a blue nose and a swollen face." Pei Qian said with a smile, "I heard that it seems that you like to challenge others with boxing, and you have never failed." Wen twisted his wrist carefully, "Then it'll trouble this girl to register her name. It's a strange thing that happens every year, especially today. Does everyone feel that they have no temper and are easy to bully? Pei Qian said, Jing Qian. Wen Chen couldn't hold back his laughter. Well, he is someone who admires Jing Qian. Now, at the foot of Beipingzi mountain, there are many young women who are just starting their careers. They like to give themselves a pseudonym of Jing Qian, and they even the attire and bun style follow the example of Jing Qian, especially when they roll up their sleeves before throwing punches. When Chen's patience was exhausted at this time, of course, it was mainly due to the guy with his mouth full of feces. Since he couldn't find the right master for the time being, just think that you are Jing Qian. Now you are a martial artist. It can be seen that the woman is a martial artist who has entered the qi refining realm. It is not easy. It is estimated that in her own sect, she is the kind of genius who is praised by the surrounding people all day long. Her master must have cultivated a lot of meticulously, and teaching boxing and feeding boxing must be very attentive. It is normal for small households on the rivers and lakes to take her as a treasure. Pei Qian smiled and said, I'm in a few realms, so it depends on how many realms you control. Wen carefully heard the words and didn't think much about it. Since the other party knew that she was a distant traveler and was good at pressing and asking boxing, then her words of taking advantage of the situation were a bit old-fashioned. I heard that when I was in the capital of Dali, whenever there was a spare time between wars, there were warriors who went to ask Jing Qian for boxing skills. Wen carefully walked forward slowly and said with a smile, then whether I am in the 4 or 5 realms, I will ask you about boxing. After all, if there is too much pressure, it will be a little embarrassing for oneself. Pei Qian rolled up his sleeves and said, just be happy. Wen carefully continued walking slowly, stretched out a palm, and invited, Miss Xing first punches. Pei Qian raised his fist and shook it gently. Looking at her posture, she wanted to say that the fist had been thrown first. When Jing laughed angrily, not bad, she really thought she was Jing Qian. One bent slightly, Wen carefully used the strength of the 5 realms, and his figure was as fast as lightning, and in a flash, he came to the young woman's side, and patted her cheek with the back of his hand. Pei Qian stood there, motionless, raised an arm, and used his wrist to block the back of Wen Jing's hand. No sound, just a moment. Pei Qian knew that it wasn't the kind of paper-pasted distant travel world. Wen carefully moved a few steps sideways, and kept a distance from her. She turned out to be an extremely solid 5-level martial artist. Or 6 realms. Chen Pingan squatted on the edge of the square, and Lu Chen also squatted aside, just the same, with his arms wrapped around his sleeves. Just like 2 peasants in the market, basking in the sun in winter, listening to people talking about the mountains, or by the field ridges in spring, looking at their fields, looking forward to a year of good harvests. Chen Pingan asked, where's Palace Master Bai? Lu Chen smiled and said, I was going with me to the foot of the mountain to see the acacia tree. I was asking why you didn't keep up, and I almost couldn't hold him. I just said that you chose a secluded path to go down the mountain, and started to complain that you didn't. Be righteous, don't take the shortcut and don't take us with you, but I think in my heart that you must not run into any trouble. Chen Pingan smiled and said, good man. He's a good guy, and he's also a good ghost. Lu Chen smiled and said, you didn't think about letting Bai Mao go to the widow school of Shujian Lake. Chen Pingan said, I thought about it before, but according to the current situation of Hehuan Mountain, there is no need to go to the widow school in Zenji. After all, it is a piece of the family business that I have saved by myself, slowly and gradually growing. Our palace master Bai may have a more sense of accomplishment. Lu Chen nodded and said, that's the truth. Wen carefully smiled and asked, then 6 realms. Pei Qian repeated that sentence, just be happy. 1 punch. Pei Qian, who had been punched by Wen Qingxin on the shoulder, stretched out her hand to grab Wen Qingxin's neck and smashed against the high wall of Fanwan Mansion. Wen Jing gently pressed his elbow against the wall, and he didn't feel it at first, but suddenly saw a slightly smiling woman's face. With a slightly changed expression, Wen Jingshan tilted his head subconsciously, and there was an additional hole in the wall in an instant. The sound of Wen Jingshan's ear was like thunder, and the soil on the wall fell rustling. Wen Xin did not dare to take it lightly anymore. Using the secret boxing technique of Fu Yi passed down by Ling Feiguan in his early years, it was like asking God to come down to Wen Xin's body. It was cheating. Wen Xin's eyes were pale gold, and his fists flowed through the acupoints all over his body. The quick shot was more than doubled, and he punched the woman's temples heavily. Bleeding, don't kill people. Otherwise, on the side of the ancestors of Shangjuan, there would be no way to round up the field. Unexpectedly, the woman just slid out 5 or 6 steps, and she could vaguely see her calm face, but in the fleeting eyes, there was a trace of hot. And while she was traversing, the woman had returned to the deadly penetrating eyes, and she kept squinting at Wen Jingshan, as if waiting for Wen Jingshan to deliver a second, heavier punch. His eyes were full of anticipation. Wen carefully used the boxing method to help him, and almost every time he punched, an ancient would be replaced. Therefore, the true meaning of the boxing technique contained in each move is in harmony with the power of those ancient gods. Just now, the first punch, Wen Jing needs to bow slightly, and run a pure infuriating breath in the body, which is the drive of the thunder spirit on the earth. Haiyue, push forward the 4 seasons vigorous boxing frame. The second-hand knife that Wen Xian handed to the woman was the axe-splitting stance of Leibu Zhangkanzi. The third punch was the water-rolling stance of Mizuba Yushi holding the tower with one hand, and then several punches, each born out of the cloud bow and Huijuan are the majestic atmosphere of the gods in the inner heaven. The woman kept her back against the wall and shook her head. She only moved a step occasionally, and soon a series of punch holes appeared on the wall at the same height as her head. Wen carefully punched very quickly, and the fists rushed towards her face. There was still only the last punch, which hit her forehead. Her head was thrown back with a thud, and the hair on the back of her head was covered in dust. Wen Jing hesitated for a moment. The woman looked as usual, smiled and said, "It's okay, people follow the fist, it's a normal thing." Lu Chen, who was watching the battle, said angrily, "If it wasn't for me to help wipe my and when carefully punch like this, that wall would be completely scrapped, and he wouldn't be a guest like that." Chen Pingan said, "After all, Daoist Lu is the grandfather of his grandfather, and he can do it if he is affectionate and reasonable." Wen took a step back carefully, shook his wrist, took a deep breath, 7 rounds. Pei Qian said, "Just be happy." Lu Qin raised his hand and beat his chest, angry. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "It's quite irritating to put yourself in the shoes." The key is that Wen Jingshan didn't know until now that Pei Qian was asking about boxing with a martial arts level lower than him from the beginning to the end, and Pei Qian didn't think about how to fight back for the time being. Probably want to know more about the box-pressing boxing techniques of Lingfei Palace. Maybe Wen Qingxian would be out of shape because of his low realm, but it doesn't matter, Pei Qian can help to correct it, check for leaks and fill in the gaps, and then use them one by one for his own use. Wen Xian changed his mind temporarily and said in a deep voice, far traveling. "Damn, if he continues to fight like this, he will feel that the other party is really Jingqian. No, he is the second of the 4 great martial arts masters in Aquarius, Pei Qian of Luopa Mountain." Pei Qian looked over Wen's careful shoulders and looked at his master. Chen Pingan quietly stretched out 3 fingers. He signaled to the great disciple of the mountain to do 3 punches and call it a day. Pei Qian's eyes were hot, and he grinned, revealing his white teeth, and there was a coldness under the moonlight. She finally stopped saying the words of the car wheel, "Fist is not pure, but also suitable for pressure. Who is used to you?" When Xan was shaking in his heart, but the other party just stopped suppressing his own momentum. In an instant, when Xan found that his fist was stagnant, as if a mouthful of pure true energy was frozen like water. After retreating again and again, when Jingshan didn't dare to hold back anymore. With a swipe of his body, he not only left the white jade plaza of Fanwan Mansion, but also traveled far and wide, retreating into the air outside Hahuan Mountain. Just as Chen Pingan was about to remind Pei Qian aloud, he gave up after thinking about it, and swallowed that sentence back in his stomach. Because it can be seen that when Shin used to scheming, it can be considered to lure the enemy into the depths. Once Pei Qian gets close, there will be a stack of fists similar to the summation of boxing, like the stack of Qi practitioners. Lu Qin nodded and smiled and said, "You're right, Ling Figuan has a powerful boxing technique that can make Wen Jing jump up 1 or 2 steps on the steps of the martial arts. The threshold is not low, most people can't learn it. Look at it, if it's ruthless, they'll say it, this guy is too serious to kill, and Pei Qian is right, people follow the boxing, it's not a big deal." Pei Qian was still in the 7th realm, and he resisted Wen Chengshan's sudden punch to the top of the mountain. Pei Qian was punched in the face and returned to the square. Pei Qian leaned back sharply and stood up slowly. It wasn't that Wen Chen didn't want to take advantage of the victory, but he couldn't do it at all, and he had to change a pure infuriating breath. Pei Qian didn't even wipe the blood on the corners of her nose and mouth. She was so used to this injury. On the 2nd floor of the bamboo building, on different battlefields, this is the case. Lu Qin grabbed the arm of the sword-carrying boy beside him, and said in a panic, "Chen Pingan, it's agreed that the 2 of them will learn boxing skills, why do you want to end the game in person? You are called bullying the younger generation, you don't talk about martial arts, don't know, do you know? Jianghu morality, still talk about it." Lu Qin continued to persuade him, "Besides, what are you like now, what is your current state?" Chen Pingan shook his arms, Lu Qin released his fingers, and the 2 continued to squat. Lu Qin started to wipe his again, "It's all right, when Xian is when Xian, and Lingfei Palace is Lingfei Palace. You can have a clear sense of grievance and grievance. It's a matter of fact." Chen Pingan looked at Wen Jing who was hovering in the wind, and said angrily, "Shut up." Pei Qian raised his arm, stretched out 3 fingers, and bent another finger, indicating to Wen carefully that you can throw 2 more punches. Wen carefully and self-aware of the hardships, and if he throws a similar 2 punches, without the opponent's shot, he will have to fall. Wen Jingxing's mind was a little clearer at the moment. There is no grievance and no enmity, it is just a discussion, and it is not necessary to face each other in life and death. After Pei Qian took it with one hand, he smiled and said, "You were right that you didn't go to accompany the capital to the battlefield." Lu Qin sucked in a breath of cold air, "Darling, such words can hurt people. It's okay, otherwise, if Pei Qian adds, hide, before, don't go, it will hurt even more." Sure enough, Wen Xin's face was twisted, and he laughed in anger, and said with a grinning face, "Okay. I'll just treat you as Pei Qian." Pei Qian still breathed steadily and calmly, took a step back and opened a fist. It is also a pile of piles and fists, and at the same time uses the back swordsmanship secretly passed down by the Master Dragon and the old cook. She obviously wants to continue to use the 7 realms to punch the opponent again. Chen Pingan was angry, laughing, and even more distressed, so he could only say, he used the strength of the distant travel realm to show the mountain top realm, don't deliberately lower the realm, use the distant travel to the distant travel, and ask the boxing in the same realm. Pei Qian scratched his head, his aura changed completely, huh? Chen Pingan suddenly became angry. Lu Qin stretched out his hand and covered his eyes, without looking, he was finished. Wen carefully used the time when the woman was chatting with the sword-backed boy, and tried his best to punch fiercely. The figure was as fast as shrinking, and he came to Pei Qian in an instant. Pei Qian was still light-hearted, and he blocked the opponent's punch abruptly, but the whole person was hit and flew out, his feet were off the ground, and his back was against the wall. Pei Qian didn't even look at Wen Jing, who vomited blood when he handed out a punch, just looked at the master. She smiled brightly and said, intentionally. Chen Pingan glared, "Be patient." Pei Qian's shoulders moved slightly, shaking the dust away from his back, and then reached out and patted the crumbs of Morocco's hair. Wen Jing's eyes were blurred with blood on his face, and he murmured, "You are that Pei Qian. You really are Pei Qian." Pei Qian turned his head and spat out a mouthful of bruised blood. "Master, it's just a discussion with others, don't get angry." Chen Pingan was silent for a moment, squeezed out a smile, and nodded lightly. Just a short while ago, Chen Ji, the teacher at the school, was about to come here in one step. Headmaster Liu, who squatted aside from covering his eyes to clasping his hands together and muttering words, breathed a sigh of relief, and then gave Pei Qian a thumbs-up. Atmosphere. Pei Qian looked at the crumbling Wen Shen and suddenly stopped. She seemed to have noticed the situation in which the other party was in a quagmire of fear, both physically and mentally. She twitched the corners of her mouth. "Go you." Wen carefully fell back to the ground. Before his consciousness was completely blurred, there was only a secret rejoicing for the rest of his life, and a greater despair that was helpless. "Are you not worthy of your opponent's punches?" Chen Pingan turned his head to look, and almost couldn't hold back his words. On the side of the acacia tree at the foot of the mountain, Bai Mao looked at Daoist Liu, who had a miserable face, and asked worriedly, "Brother Liu, what's going on? Is there a precious object in Fanwan Mansion?" Lu Chen sighed and said, "Brother Bai, it's hard to say if you are dumb to eat Huanglian." Bai Mao wanted to pat the young Taoist on the shoulder and say a few words of comfort. Lu Chen jumped sideways and sighed, "Learn from Chen Lingjun." Bai Mao was confused, and withdrew his hand angrily. "Lu Daochang is good at moving." Ignoring Wen Jingshan, who fell to the ground, Chen Pingan slowed down, walked down the mountain with Pei Qian, and asked softly, "How is it? Do I need to take Sunwang Dan from Qinghu Palace?" Pei Qian held back his laughter, scratched his head and said, "Master, in your impression, do you think I'm so unbeatable?" Chen Pingan smiled and said nothing. "Is not it? In Master's impression, haven't you always been the little black charcoal who cried when you walked with blisters on your feet? It seems that in the blink of an eye, the little girl has grown up. Back then, on the long journey, I used to jump up and down, jumping on the small black charcoal of the checkered box." Chen Pingan asked softly, "When you were young, your master was in charge of the East and the West, and he was in charge of a lot of things. Did you feel annoyed at that time? If we use an analogy, childhood is a game of jumping squares, then the rules, words, and deeds of parents and elders are those rules and lines." Pei Qian said, "Of course it won't be annoying." As a result, she was hit with a chestnut. "Alas, I have never been able to deceive my master since I was a child." Pei Qian had to say honestly, "When I was very young, I would feel annoyed, but when I get to Luopa Mountain, it will not be. Maybe it's because the master went out for a long trip soon after that, and no longer reasoned with her. Maybe it was because she went to Luopao Mountain, and even if the master was not around, she really grew up, who knows?" Chen Pingan pretended to be relaxed and casual and said, "I heard that Lu Yuzhou also participated in the discussion at the Patriarch's Hall in the capital of Yunyan Kingdom." Pei Qian was stunned for a while, then nodded and said, "I know, I haven't met. Anyway, there is no friendship, and there is nothing to talk about when we meet." Pei Qian immediately smiled and said, "Master, Sister Yu is there too." Chen Pingan raised his face and taught, "No big or small. Leave it in the past, chestnuts will be full." Pei Qian's footsteps were light, she took a breath, and the breeze brushed across her smooth forehead. Chen Pingon said, "Since I'm back, there are a lot of strange people over there about the excavation of Dadu. If you are not one of them, you can just go back to Luopa Mountain and spend more time with Nwanshu and Xiaomimi. We can go to Piyin Mountain together to see the liveliness and congratulate Wei Shanjun." Pei Qian nodded vigorously. "Okay, master is right." Chen Pingon laughed dumbly. "If you don't turn your head to look, it seems that there is still a small black charcoal around. The moon is born on the sea." In the storm, the old boatman who was punting the boat started a fire and cooked a pot of sea fish for himself. The old boatman, whose name is Xiancha, sits cross-legged by himself, holds a bowl in one hand, and sings while holding the boat. Wait patiently for that pot of stewed fish to cook. It was probably limited by his aptitude for cultivating Taoism. Even though Lu Qin, who never recognized himself as a master, was rewarded by punting a boat to visit immortals, Gu Qingsong still couldn't find a way. There were even many unbreakable spiritual barriers. Lu Qin left Haoran world, and Gu Qingsong bit the bullet and went ashore to ask Chao Rong and several of his younger brothers for advice, and then he was able to pass the barrier smoothly. So many times, Gu Qingsong would think that maybe he didn't become a master and apprentice. If you don't become Lu Chen's disciple, you won't get Mrs. Gui's favor. Gu Qingsong felt that he had no reason not to feel depressing in life, so he occasionally went ashore to relax, and with whom he said a few honest and fair words. He did not know that they would be angry. Noticing the slight vibration at the stern, Gu Qingsong didn't turn his head. Although he admitted that arguing and fighting were not good, he really didn't think anyone could put his sack on. A voice that was both familiar and unfamiliar sounded, "Fellow Daoist Xiancha, long time no see." The old boatman shook his head. He must be dreaming. The uninvited guest laughed and said, "The boat is shaking, and the wine in the bowl is shaking. It can't be a dream, right? If there is such a strange dream, bring me a basket." Gu Qingsong put down the wine bowl silently, stood up first, and then knelt down to the ground, unable to stand up. From the outsider's point of view, this was not taking off his pants and farting. The old boat kowtowed a few times to himself, and muttered, "Gu Qingsong pays a visit to master." After eating his head, Gu Qingsong sat up and turned his back to the Taoist priest at the stern of the boat. "It is true that you are the master, but the disciple also has some temper." Lu Qin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Hey, he was sulking. Just because of the name, fellow Daoist Xiancha. Lu Qin came to the bow of the boat, squatted beside the old boatman, stretched out his hand to pick up the lid of the pot. The steam was steaming, and the fragrance filled the air. He nodded in approval. "The craftsmanship is much better than before. I was afraid that you would be sad, so I refrained from talking about your cook. Art. It's hard to describe in words. You are a blind man. You like to ask me how my craft is now, whether I have improved again. Seriously, if you don't like to talk, it's boring. I will be chasing after me for wages, and I am so happy that my ears are clear, otherwise I would have gone to sea with someone else to help steer the boat." Sad and aggrieved, Lao Zhozi murmured, "If you really have no eyesight, why would you ask if your craftsmanship has improved?" Lu Qin snorted, and said with a face full of surprise, "It turned out that I misunderstood you." Gu Qingsong sat sideways, still looking straight at the sea, and said, "You are the master, you have the final say, don't care about my mood." Lu Qin was so angry that he slapped Gu Qingsong on the back of his head. "It's almost done, are you finished yet?" Gu Qingsong remained silent. Lu Qin said, "If you act like this again, I'll be leaving." Gu Qingsong still did not speak. A gust of breeze blew, and there was no Lucian figure on the bow. Gu Qingsong was sluggish for a moment, looking around, as if the master was really angry with him. The old man began to cry. Lu Qin just lay quietly on the stern side of the boat, looking at the sky full of stars, and stretched out a hand, as if within reach. Zhao Shusha said, "There is something, as a senior brother, I have to tell you something." Ning Ji was a little nervous. "Brother Zhao, say it, I'll listen." Zhao Shusha said, "Before going to bed next time, remember to wash your feet, and you will feel panicked." Ning Ji laughed. Zhao Shusha closed his eyes and said with a smile, "Zhang Jiaolu's words are really good, be honest and sleep at ease." Ning Ji, go to sleep, and get up early. Ning Ji said stupidly, "Brother Zhao, I don't seem to be able to sleep yet, you go to bed first and leave me alone." Zhao Shusha smiled and said, "Don't wait for me to snore, you won't be able to sleep even if you want to." Ning Ji said, "It's okay, senior brother Zhao, I have the ability to fall asleep if I want to. In fact, apart from that, before going to bed every time, as long as Ning Ji wants to wake up at any time, he can wake up at that time, and there is almost no error. I just thought this kind of thing was too weird, and the boy didn't have the nerve to say it. And this ability is not innate, it seems to be a scene that only appeared on the road of escape when he was young. Brother Zhao is really amazing." Because intuition told Ning Ji that when Daoist Lu asked about the first talisman in the world, senior brother Zhao clearly knew the answer, but he just didn't speak. Zhao Shusha actually had a word that came to his lips, but he still didn't say it in the end. "Ning Ji, you and I can meet the same gentleman and master, and we will cherish it and practice hard in the future." Under the eaves of the school, Lao Xiuzai opened his eyes, and before he knew it, it was dawn. Sitting beside him was the closed disciple who had been guarding the door all night. The old Xiuzai quickly sat up and said with a face full of guilt, "This is so troublesome, Mr. Resentment is confused." Chen Pingan nodded and said, "Sir, it's good that you know it yourself." The old Xiuzai laughed. "We are the only ones who can say such words, Pingan." Chen Pingan asked curiously, "What are the 8 words that Mr. The old Xiuzai looked up at the bright sky after dawn, and said with a smile, "Walking at night with candles, the sky will dawn." As for the truth of this matter, Jin Shanjun could either ask Shanju Qin himself, or find another way to inquire about the news. If you don't mention this, the Confucian Temple won't talk about it. It's better to have less than one thing. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "The 5 sacred mountains and the great blasphemy are promulgated by the Confucian Temple. It is a rule established by the sages in ancient times. It has been followed for a long time by later generations, so it is regarded as an unalterable golden rule. In fact, in the Confucian Temple archives, it is not with such records. If we didn't check the archives carefully, we wouldn't even know that Shanjun and Da Gongho could actually draw up their own divine titles." Wei Bo was silent for a moment, then bowed to Chen Pingan in thanks. Even if it is rumored that Wei Bo and Pai Yunshan have a good relationship with Luo Peishan, they wear a pair of trousers. It's just that for such a big event, no matter how good the relationship with Chen Pingan is, and the friends no longer see each other, they have to thank him in earnest. Chen Pingan started talking nonsense in a serious manner. "The matter is urgent, and the Confucian Temple is urgent, so I made an assertion. I told Mr. Yu that you think the night tour is a good name, and the gentleman also thinks it is really good. For a long time, it has been very beneficial to the mountains, waters, and qi fortune of the entire Beiyue boundary. Only the qi practitioners in the entire vast world in the future will mention Piyun Mountain in their mouths, or they will think in their hearts, or they may be mentioned in the Shanshui Di newspaper. The number of words will become more and more frequent." Wei Bo's face was ashen, and he resisted the urge to scold him. Before Chen Pingan could finish speaking, Wei Shanjun threw his sleeves suddenly, making a crackling sound, and was about to return to Shanjun's mansion. Pai Yunshan had to quickly spread the word to the Confucian Temple, and said that except for Night Tour, he could give any name to the god. Chen Pingon hurriedly grabbed Wei Bo's arm and forcibly kept Wei Shanjun behind, and said with a smile, "Why is Wei Shanjun still in a hurry? The effort to cultivate one's mind hasn't come to the door, right?" Wei Bo gritted his teeth and said, "I am only happy if I have to be humiliated and thrown into the Confucian Temple and Middle-earth Divine Continent." Chen Pingon felt a little guilty, maybe in fact, the famous Beiyuan Night Tour banquet in Aquarius Island, now even the Qingming world has heard of it. What's more, there is Lu Chenzai who is not too big to watch the fun. With the usual temper of Headmaster Lu, he will definitely help to make a name for himself when he returns to Baiyujing this time. No, I have to remind Lu Qin, but don't make yourself misunderstood by Wei Bo. Chen Pingon took Wei Bo and sat at the table together, really disgusted with Night Tour. Wei Bo sneered, "What do you think?" Chen Pingon said, "One punch can knock down two shopkeepers. From a distance, he looks like a Liang, and from a distance, he looks like a hidden official. Such expressions and nicknames can't fit in a big bag. Look at me and learn from me." Wei Bo sneered, "You can't die to save face, but you can't die to shame either." Chen Pingon asked tentatively, "I really don't think about it anymore. The book says that you shouldn't make promises to others easily when you're happy, and you shouldn't answer others when you're angry. I think these two statements are very reasonable." Wei Bo said, "Don't talk. If you're okay, I'll go back. Don't think I'm idle. When Shan meeting the sea is not a joke. I don't talk about the boundaries of Beiyue outside the mountain, just talk about the 24 divisions of Shanjun Mansion. I have to turn around every day. Participate in discussions." Chen Pingon said, "I promised Li Xing before that I would give a detailed strategy. During this period of time, apart from my own practice, almost all my thoughts were spent on this matter. If you modify it, it will be sent to the Confucian Temple. You can add your signature to it, so that if Piyun Mountain creates his own divine name, the possibility of passing the Confucian Temple will be higher." Wei Bo's face softened a little. "No. The Confucian Temple is not a fool. My kind of indiscriminate deeds will only make you laugh." Chen Pingon smiled and said, "Are you stupid? You really want to add Wei Bo's name? Can you write tens of thousands of words by yourself?" Wei Bo asked curiously, "Write what?" Chen Pingon said, "I will show you the first draft later. If you are willing to start writing, try to finish it within 10 days. Then you will hand it over to the Confucian Temple, and the recipient will write the scriptures. If you feel that there is nothing to write about, and you are unwilling to add your own name at the end, please return the first draft to me. Bashed, let me advise you one more sentence, really the last sentence, about Pai Yunshan's exclusive night tour. Sir, and Lu Qin, all three of us feel good, none of us." Wei Bo nodded, "I read the first draft before making a decision." Chen Pingon took out 3 thick booklets from his sleeve. "Take them back and read them, remember to keep them carefully." Wei Bo put the 3 booklets in his sleeve, nodded and said, "Is there anything else?" Chen Pingon smiled and said, "His Majesty the Emperor may have to leave Beijing in small clothes in the near future, and take a trip to the Yuzhong County Logging Institute. I will go there and have a look at that time. Would you like to come with me?" Wei Bo hesitated for a moment, then said, "Your Majesty left the capital earlier than expected. It is estimated that he has already entered the boundary of Yuzhou by now." Chen Pingon said, "I see. I'll rush over by myself, so I won't bring you along." When Wei Bo returned to Piyun Mountain, on the back mountain path of Luopao Mountain, there was a burly young ghost walking with Chen Pingon in green shirt. It was hard to see the sun again. It felt every breath in the world outside the prison. All have to be cherished. It was Yinlu, the deputy city lord of the fairy hairpin city in the wilderness. He was detained by Chen Pingon. He has been diligently writing secret affairs in the wilderness. Inlu wrote a magnificent work. Of course, in order to make up the number of words, Inlu didn't bother, and wrote a lot of trivial nonsense. Fortunately, the young hidden official didn't care, but felt that some Inlu would definitely be rejected by the other party. The removed details are quite appreciated. As a result, the incompleteness of the soul caused the cultivation base to plummet, and even if the cultivation base was still at its peak, what could be done? In this young hidden official who split the fairy hairpin city in two, how did Inlu flatter him? Walking along the road, Inlu cleaned up the words that he had accumulated in his life, just like saying that the dojo of Lord Ingwan is one of the best places in the world. The people who listened were not embarrassed, just let the silver deer be disgusting over there. This caused Inlu himself to gradually become embarrassed. He was really exhausted and a little tired. Inlu said cautiously, "Master Ingwan, speak from the bottom of my heart, I am a ghost, and every step I take, I am afraid of degrading the green mountains and rivers in this place." Chenpingon smiled and said, "Oh. Then go back and stay." Inlu choked for a moment, and dared not speak nonsense again. Chenpingon, who had sleeves in both hands, stretched out his hand, twisted his wrist, and placed a whisk called Fuchin on his arm. When Inlu saw this, his heart tightened, and he said in a trembling voice, "Lord Ingwan, why don't I go back?" In fact, during these days of prison food, Inlu was miserable. Chenpingon went to check the progress of the book every 3 weeks and 5 times. He raised his hand, held a blue brick, and smashed a brick on Yinla's head, hitting the silver deer again and again, rolling his head all over the ground. Chenpingon only occasionally saw the pages written by Inlu, and he had a good eye. Would he put the blue brick next to the bookcase to remind Inlu that it was well written and escaped disaster? Chenpingon smiled and said, "It's rare to come out to take a breath, so why don't you give me face to go back and stay in such a hurry?" Inlu bowed his head and hurriedly clarified, "I'm just worried about being seen by outsiders, misunderstanding and mixing with ghosts, and losing the face of Lord Ingwan." Chenpingon said, "I really don't know the owner of the hairpin, and you Guezu master. How do you feel when you see your disciples and grandchildren?" Inlu sighed, "I'm sure I can't bear to look directly at me. I don't care if I can't see it. Even if I pass by the fairy hairpin city, am not willing to sit in the city." The founder of fairy hairpin city, Gue Lingxiang, a female cultivator without Taoism, is also the second owner of the ancient Taoist hairpin. The second-generation city lord, the ghost named Kainu, is actually a mosquito. She has been hiding on Huangquan Road for a long time. The whisk is the treasure she used to avoid the sight of Fengdu ghosts. For thousands of years, the old woman has never been able to refine it, otherwise she would have returned to the wild from the underworld and competed for the throne. Then there was the big demon Wudi who walked out of the picture scroll at that time and was pitted by Master Qiangu again. According to the genealogy of Xianchuqing, it is also the ancestor of Inlu. Then came the contemporary city lord whose head was beheaded by Hao Su, the Ascension Realm cultivator Xuanpu. For thousands of years, the highest place in the wild has not been Tuyu Mountain, but Xianzhu City. As a result, when the last hidden official of the Sword Qi Great Wall around him traveled through the wild world, the word highest disappeared, so now the highest one has become the Sword Qi Great Wall. The whisk in his hand belongs to the well-deserved treasure of the immortal soldiers on the mountain, with a purple wooden handle, more than 3,000 snow-white silk threads, and a small golden ring to adorn the whisk. Chenpingon intends to present the whisk to the Patriarch Hall of Feishing City. Inlu dared to ask, "Lord Ingwan, the monk who passed by the door before met me, what's the background?" Chenpingon changed his hands to hold the whisk. "It's called Lu Wei, the Yin-Yang family who is the bottleneck in the fairyland, from the Lu family in the Middle Earth, and he is half of my hometown." The old account and the new account are confused. Inlu was silent, of course not the names of Lu Wei and the Lu clan in the Middle Earth, but the whisk in the hands of the young Ingguan, which made Inlu more and more eye-catching. Qianggu, the great patriarch of the Supreme Being, could it be that he was also poisoned? Chen Pingan asked casually, what would you do if you were an enemy of the Lu clan in the Middle Earth? After all the fuss, Inlu felt that just chatting with this young hidden official would be exhausting, but he had already asked so. Inlu had to seriously think about this kind of question, think for a moment, and tentatively said, even if I'm in Xianzhou City, I've heard the name of the Lu clan in the Middle Earth for a long time, and if I don't deal with them, wouldn't it mean to be an enemy of a great monk of the 14th realm? If it was me, I would find a place to hide. He is the kind of big backer who can wrestle with the Lu family. If it is that kind of deadly feud and is hunted down by the Lu family, I will go to the 100,000 Mountains and be in the company of Senior Tao Ting. Anyway, I can save a life. Of course, Lord Ingguan, it doesn't matter, it's just Lu's headache. Chen Pingan was non-committal and said, don't follow, go for a walk to the front mountain of Luopa Mountain, remember not to leave the mountain gate too far, otherwise you will be at your own risk. How dare Inlu dare to wander around by himself? After all, it is Chen Pingan's dojo. Don't worry about saying a word wrong. Inlu has to worry that after leaving Chen Pingan's side, he may have a look and a face on the way to Qianshan. If you don't please anyone, and if you don't agree with anyone, you will be killed on the spot. Inlu thought about it. To be careful, it was safer to stay by Chen Pingan's side, but he didn't know how to speak for a while. After all, in Xianzhou City, it was others who flattered him, so he was the deputy city lord who was in charge. Judging the situation and choosing every word carefully, Chen Pingan said, do as the locals do, and the guest as the host. You don't understand the truth at all. Inlu is very sad in his heart. Chen Pingan, if you want to say this, I have nothing to say. When you go to the fairy hairpin city, why don't you talk about the guest and the host? Along the way, the pavilion is seated, and the name of the pavilion alone has opened Yinla's eyes. Iran, sitting high, in the cloud, full moon, modest, raining, 8 winds. The one with the longest name is a pavilion that says, long-term happiness, looking at the green hills and not getting old, and the shortest and more interesting pavilion is the Ting Pavilion. A mansion appeared in his sight, with white walls and black tiles hidden among the poles and green bamboos. Chen Pingan put away his whisk and said, go ahead. Inlu had no choice but to bow his head, follow the decree of the hidden official. On the back mountain side of Luopao Mountain, there is a pair of young Chao clan disciples who practice martial arts here. The door was open, and the girl was walking and practicing boxing in the martial arts field in the courtyard. Chen Pingan was still standing at the door and knocked gently on the door. After the girl walked through the boxing, she was obviously still very nervous when she saw the mountain master. This is the 3rd time the two sides have met. The first time was when she accompanied her son to the bamboo house to meet with Shanju Qin, but she didn't actually chat a few words. Last time, Lord Qin Shanju visited this place in person, and even taught Chao Yang a boxing session. After the competition, Chao Yang was convinced that he lost, and after thinking about it repeatedly, the girl Wufu benefited a lot. Just when Chao Yang was at a loss, Chao Yin quickly walked out of the study, went down the steps, and said, Mr. Qin. Chen Pingan smiled and said, Fengxing, I heard that Wudong has entered the 5 realms, so I came here to congratulate you. I won't stay for a long time, just sit for a while and leave without disturbing your practice. The young man in front of him is the younger brother of the Chao clan in Shangzhou Kingdom, whose name is Fengxing. That is to say, the Chao family does not want to become famous too early, otherwise Chao Yin will be famous long ago. As for Chao Yang, who is nicknamed Wudong, the girl has just entered the 5 realms. Not only thanks to Chen Shanju for teaching boxing in person, but also sincere thanks to Mr. Zhu for frequently coming here to feed boxing during this period. Especially when Master Chen Shanju was in the martial arts field last time, he practiced more than 40 stakes and punches for Chao Yang in one breath, which was like opening a new door to the world of martial arts for Chao Yang. Therefore, Chao Yang couldn't help but be nervous. Now that he sees Master Chen Shanju again, it's more than a godly reverence. Chen Pingan walked into the main hall. Chao Yang quickly brought tea. His hands were shaking. Chen Pingan pretended not to see, and chatted with Chao Yin about the current situation of practice, and then turned his head when the girl put the teacup aside on the flower table. With a smile, Chao Yang thanked Chao Yang with a sullen face and forced a smile. The girl's forehead was covered in fine sweat, and she walked gently to Chao Yin's side. She didn't take a seat. Other than that, it will slack off. Chao Yin had also persuaded her not to care so much here in Luopa Mountain, but it didn't work, and the boy had to give up. Here, Chen Pingan asked them about their cultivating behavior, and he just chatted with Chao Yinla at home and listened to more common words. Over time, Chao Yang also relaxed. Yinlu parted ways with the young hidden official, and walked alone on the road, trembling, looking at the posture, for fear of stepping on a fallen leaf on the road. Then Yinlu was at the end of the path, and saw a strange little girl in black with two thin eyebrows, a cotton bag on the cross-body, a small golden pole on her shoulders, and a green bamboo walking stick in her hand. She was jumping on the mountain path. Jumping and jumping, the two sides met each other and stopped almost at the same time. Yinlu lost his cultivation base in the immortal realm, but his vision was still there. He found that the other party seemed to be just a small water monster in the lower 5 realms. On the contrary, the black robe on the girl's body is of good quality, but as soon as Yinlu has this idea, he can't wait to give himself a big mouth. What are you thinking? Are you courting death? After the little girl in black stopped timidly, she moved a little, walked to the side of the road, and then silently turned to the side, as if she was thinking about facing the wall and standing as a punishment. Although Sister Gua has taught Jianghu experience, don't panic when encountering things, and run away immediately. But Millet felt that she was patrolling the mountains, and there was no reason to be so timid. In fact, Yinlu was also flustered, for fear that this little water monster was the maid next to immortal monarch Luopa Mountain, the little maid who brought tea and water, or the boy who burned the fire in the pill stove. So Yinlu tried his best to make his face more kind and kind. He smiled and said, "My name is Yinlu. I am a chi practitioner who brought Luopao Mountain by Lord Ingguan." "Who are you?" Zhou Mili was relieved, turned his head, and said with a bright smile, "That's right, hello, Immortal Yinlu, my name is Zhou Mili, the rice grain of rice grain is the right side of Luopa Mountain. I am the mountain patrol envoy appointed by the master of the mountain. Guan, sesame guanli with small grains of rice." Yinlu was stunned for a moment. Mountain patrol envoy, what the heck? Does Luopa Mountain still have such an official position? However, since it was appointed by the young Ingguan, Yinlu smiled more and kindly, walked forward slowly, put his hands behind his back, and explained as he walked. It turned out to be Dao Yu Zhou, who is in charge of patrolling the mountain. "I just walked here with Lord Ingguan. Lord Ingguan said that I first arrived, and if I am not familiar with the place of life, let me stroll around and go to Qianshan to have a look." Zhou Mili grinned, and quickly closed his mouth, reminding himself not to show his teeth, straightening his back, and said crisply, "It's a good thing, it'll lead the way for the Yinlu Immortal. Let's go to Luopao Mountain, all the avenues and paths, I'm very familiar." Yinlu weighed the pros and cons and felt that it was feasible. With this little girl who seems to be not very smart, it would be better to behave as an approachable person, so that the first impression of the immortal gentleman in Luopao Mountain would not be too bad. No seek success but nothing. One big and one small, passing through the pavilions of different shapes, simple or exquisite, the millet grains are full of joy. One by one, they introduced the origin of the names of those pavilions to the Yinlu Xianchang, and by the way, they praised their own mountain masters. Yinlu certainly didn't dare not agree with his reputation and merit. During this period, Xiaomi reached out and asked immortal Yinlu if she wanted to eat melon seeds. Yinlu looked down and laughed, and declined the little girl's kindness, and Xiaomi scratched her head. It's not good to eat melon seeds alone, so I put it back on my sleeve. On a high place, in an octagonal unpointed pavilion called Remengling, a small street with a yellow hat and blue shoes leaned against the pavilion pillar, holding a green bamboo stick in his arms. His face was gentle, and he looked at the black-clothed boy who was chatting non-stop. Girl. The sable-capped aside said angrily, good guy, this silver deer, shameless, Xiao Mo, do you want me to teach him a lesson? Xiao Mo said softly, no need. Don't interfere with Xiaomi's hospitality. Xiago said aggrieved, I can't see millet being wronged. Previously, the grains of millet were on the side of the bamboo building, and when the white clouds were blooming outside the cliffs, Guozhujiu once took Xiago and the white-haired boy to play a prank together. Early in the sea of clouds, 3 heads floated on the white clouds. Looked up at the cliff, rolled her eyes, made a face together. She really startled Xiaomi, and then when she found out the truth, she was very happy, burst into laughter, and couldn't hold back her joy. Xiao Mo smiled and said, don't go to Yuya Jiangshui mansion to scare the water goddess. It's not an example. The Yuya River water goddess, who was always afraid every day, had previously been haunted in the water house, and she became more determined to change the site. As long as she could leave the surrounding area of Luopao Mountain, it would be fine even if she was demoted to fill the vacancy. Xiago turned to look at Xiao Mo. She was warm in her heart. She moved quietly and then moved, tilted her head, wanting to lean on Xiao Mo's shoulder. The little bird was in love with each other. As a result, Xiao Mo reached out and blocked her head, preventing her from succeeding. Xiago stood on tiptoe and rubbed his face against the warm palm with lightning speed. Xiao Mo withdrew his hand and sighed softly. Aren't his son and Mr. Zhu really tricking him? Xiago was already satisfied and said, the waddle from Lixiazu, and the little dragon named by Deng, have already gotten to know Chen Lingjun very well, and have had several drinks in the town's Qilong Lane. Why don't you just take them up the mountain? Xiao Mo explained with a smile, because the last time I went down the mountain, it was a sneak out, and Jing Qing was afraid that he would miss the mark on the sun side, so he discussed with Jing Hao and Bai Deng. Being a guest here, not only does he not need to be disciplined, but after that he leads the 2 masters up the mountain, and maybe he can be praised by the young master. Xiago rubbed his brows. This Chen Lingjun really thinks that Chen Pingan doesn't know anything, or is he just pretending? Xiao Mo narrowed his eyes and smiled and said, no doubt, Jing Qing really thinks so, and the young master will pretend not to know about it in advance. Xiago retracted his gaze. Come on, Chen Lingjun just left the town and returned to the mountain. In the early years, on the side of Kolongxiang, Jiao Lao Shinxian once spit out the truth after drinking, and when he was drunk, he sat under the table. He admires 2 people the most. One is the right protector Zhou Mili on the mountain, and the other is Chen Lingjun, who likes to come down the mountain to wander around the town. One is on the mountain, the other is outside the mountain. They are exactly the people who are comforted by our Luopa mountain. The great hero, the rest of the immortals, even Mr. Zhu, who is the big housekeeper, have to stay behind. Not really insightful. Xiago suddenly asked, if Yinlu couldn't control his thoughts just now, what would he do? A 100-eyed gluttonous robe has been thought of, but I don't know how to restrain it. Xiao Mo said indifferently, then I will send it to see its master Xuanpu. Xiago wondered, your son will let you take action. Xiao Mo smiled and said, "My son released the silver deer to let the silver deer survive and die." Xiago suddenly said, "This guy has good luck." On the road, Yinlu Xianchang accompanied the little girl, and it seemed that they were getting along quite well. Xiao Mo said, "It's just the beginning, the road is long and difficult." Xiago murmured in a low voice, "A scholar has a dirty heart." Xiao Mo, who was leaning against the pavilion, stood up straight. Xiago noticed the change in Xiao Mo's energy, so he hurried to find a remedy and smoothed himself out. He laughed and said, "Good words, there is absolutely no embarrassment." Xiao Mo walked down the steps first. "Bai Jing, I think Mr. Zhu is right. There is no absolute good or absolute bad character in the world. It's a double-edged sword." Xiago nodded vigorously and jumped down the steps. "Mr. Zhu, everything is right." After all, he was a man who regarded his appearance as dung. Today, the boy in Xingyi went down the mountain early in the morning, swaggered to ride the Dragon Lane, walked into the New Year's shop with his hands behind his back, glanced at the shopkeeper Shiro, sighed, put up the music of the seniors on the mountain, and sighed down. The unfortunate words of indifference: "If you are stubborn and do not strive for progress, you are too lazy to talk about you." The little mute, who has always been close to Shiro, immediately became unhappy, and quarreled with Chen Lingjun directly. Chen Lingjun quarreled a few words and felt bored. From a shopkeeper in a small shop on Longxiang Lane, he became the second manager of a cross-continental ferry. Without a great drinking friend, Chen Lingjun became a little lonely. He entered the Chaotu shop and regarded himself as half a teacher. After mentioning Tianzhu or a few words, he left Qilong Lane, went to the restaurant on the main street, set up a table, and waited for Qingong Taibao and Manojun to come here to meet for a morning drink. After a morning drink, Chen Lingjun took them into the mountains. Arriving at the entrance of Luopao Mountain, Chen Lingjun found that Xiaomi was sitting at the table drinking tea, and a guest with a strange face was sitting across from her. As for Xianwei Daoist, he was still the same, sitting on the bamboo chair at the door, reading a book with a new version. Xing Dafeng, that tired and lazy person, is still sleeping and dreaming. Chen Lingjun coughed a few times, moistened his throat, and shook his sleeves. "Millet, a guest is here." Millet got up in a hurry, greeted them, and went to boil water to make tea. The little girl was happy, and some were busy. Bai Deng, whose name is Manik Jun, has been in the town for a few days, and now he is stunned. Although the mountains are still clearly distinguished, Bai Deng still learned a little bit of the inside story of this Lizhu cave through chatting with the boy in Xingyi at the wine table. Only then did I know that 3,000 years ago, the end of the Battle of the Dragon Slaying was here. And now the only true dragon in the world, Zhu, the king of the East Sea, made her fortune in that mud bottle alley. It is no wonder that when Bai Deng walked alone on Fulu Street in Taoya Lane, he felt both gloomy and freezing cold, and he felt like falling into a frying pan, cooking his soul on fire, which caused his heart to be unstable. According to Chen Lingjun, there used to be a Longquan sword sect in the mountains in the west, but now it has moved to the north. The 40-year-old Jianxian, this guy is young from his own master, and he is also a good buddy with himself. This place is only one of the 72 small caves. Is it already so terrifying? Bai Deng is still so, step by step. Jing Hao, the great monk of the Ascension realm, can naturally see more clues, and is even more frightened. Ma Kushuan from Xinghua Alley, Gu Ken from Nipping Alley, Xiao Yao from Fulu Street, a half-disciple of Bai Yi, descendants of Xia Shi from Beiju Luzhou, Xia Ling from Taoya Alley. A young generation of monks with great reputation, they are crowded in such a small town the size of a palm. Wearing a long green shirt and long coat, Chen Shanzhu did not know when, sitting on the top of the steps of the main road, Jisa Peak, Luopa Mountain. Standing up, stepping out one step, and going straight to the foot of the mountain, Chen Pingan and Chen Lingjun smiled and said, "A guest? Your friend." Chen Lingjun's eyes turned sharply, and he was a little guilty. He was only around new friends and couldn't show his feelings at home. On the side of the wine table, but the cows were blown out. As a veteran of Luopao Mountain, especially on the side of his own master, his words are very useful, face, and leverage. But in fact, Chen Lingjun knew very well that on Luopao Mountain, his status was not as good as Nwanshu and the other little idiots. After just a few drinks, Chen Lingjun boasted about his experience in the arena, and even boasted about his brotherhood with Wei Shanjun, but he was only at the wine table and never talked about his master's deeds. It seems that it is best for you to know. If you still don't know for the time being, then you will find out for yourself in the future. Chen Pingan rubbed the head of the boy in Tsing Yi. Since it's your friend, it's a friend of Luopao Mountain. After drinking tea here, let's go up the mountain for a chat. Chen Pingan then turned to look at the two guests, and said with a smile, "Two fellow Taoists, you are welcome." Chen Lingjun realized it later, and only remembered one thing. There were very few honored guests who could make his master take the initiative to greet him, and he could count on one hand. Thinking of this, Chen Lingjun felt a little empty in his heart. He felt that a friend who had only known each other for a few days should not be brought back to Luopa Mountain like this, and bothered his master to treat the guests in person. When Chen Pingan said polite words, his heartfelt words were extremely unfriendly to the landlord, Jing Hao. "I've heard that none of the Ascension cultivators dared to leave Lixiazu and go south. If Chen Lingjun hadn't led the way today, even if you come to Luopao Mountain, it is not interesting, anyway. No one asks anyone for anything, and the well water does not violate the river water, so you can keep away from each other. Bai Deng, you can board a night boat in the future. There is an old friend of yours there. He is similar to your current state. He is the patriarch of Sishui who used to cut white snakes on the road. Now he is one of the 4 cities in the night boat. The Lord of Hanging Arch City." Jing Hao's face froze for a while, but soon returned to normal, and immediately replied with a smile in her heart, "Chen Yingguan is bright and upright, quick to talk. This trip to Luopa Mountain, even if you have closed doors today, it doesn't matter." Bai Deng's face was dark and unclear. He suppressed the anger in his heart, resisted the urge to turn around and left, and said in his heart, "If you have a chance, you must go and see this person." Compared with the words of Chen Pingan and Jing Hao, Bai Deng, who heard it in his ears, felt that he could accept it. No matter what their mood is, Jing Hao and Bai Deng are all impressed by the boy in Tsing Yi at this moment. Chen Lingjun couldn't listen to what Chen Pingan and the 2 fellow Taoists were saying, but just said to himself, "Master, I promise not to be an example." Chen Pingan said, "I can't trust you, and I'll give you 2 more chances to do not set an example." Hearing this, it was more useful than any comforting words. Chen Lingjun immediately regained his energy, and the haze between his brows was swept away. Sure enough, as long as the master is on the mountain, he will have someone to support him. Chen Lingjun was kicked on the buttocks, turned his head to look. It was Xing Dafeng, the condescending man, holding a kettle in his hand. He said with a hilarious smile, "Are you here, friends? Is it the vain Busy and Chenjulio who are thinking about it?" Chen Lingjun crossed his arms around his chest, and said angrily, "No." The young coachman was busy in vain, and Chenjulio, a poor scholar, both belonged to Luzhou from Beiju, and the 2 poor people, although before they parted, Chen Lingjun left a sum of immortal money for them to travel across continents, so that they could come to Baya Pingzu. Here I am looking for myself to catch up with the old days, but Chen Lingjun feels that the virtue of the 2 of them spending money like water is probably hanging. Chen Pingan squinted his eyes for a moment and looked at the end of the road in the mountains. One was unexpected but reasonable, and the other, who didn't know him, walked side by side with the former, and he didn't lose his temper at all. Chen Qinglu. As for the person who traveled with Chen Qinglu, the identity of the person is temporarily unknown. Xiao Mo then appeared at the gate of the mountain, and there was a young girl with a mink hat in high spirits, rubbing her hands lightly, eager to try. Bai Deng just glanced at the man in the blue shirt on the slow-moving road, and immediately felt that his heart was splitting. Out of an instinct, he just wanted to kneel and kowtow. Jing Hao looked even more embarrassed, like a gentleman on the beam who was caught by his master. Chen Lingjun followed everyone's line of sight and turned his head to look. Taking a closer look, the boy in Xingyi burst into laughter, threw his sleeves, strode forward, one jumped up, raised his palms high, and clapped heavily with his good brother who had reunited after a long absence. This scene saw Jing Hao and Bai Deng's eyelids trembling. When Chen Lingjun landed on both feet, it was a monkey picking peaches. He was blocked by the poor and sour scholar reaching out his hand, but Chen Lingjun twisted his body and swept his waist with one foot. Chen Qinglu patted his shirt, and Chen Lingjun retracted his feet and nodded. Good brother, I was persuaded and didn't spend all the money in the brothel. Jing Hao knew that Chen Lingjun had a good relationship with the person who slayed the dragon, but he never thought that the relationship would be so strong. Bai Deng was unaware. He took a few steps back and knocked over the bench behind him without realizing it. Chen Lingjun put his hands on his hips. I just forgot about my good brother when I was thinking about whether you are patronizing yourself to drink flower wine. The poor scholar complained, Brother, what nonsense are you talking about? You will punish yourself for 3 cups later. Chen Pingon stood beside Chen Lingjun. Chen Qinglu had a completely different face on Chen Shan's his side. With an indifferent expression, he introduced his friends with his heart. His name is Axian Jian. He has been my friend for many years, and he can't be compared with the hidden officials who have friends all over the world. There are only a handful of my friends, and this one by my side is one of them. Sort of coming chapter 1039. There are many guests at a table, so we have to squeeze it. Chen Pingon sat between Xiaomi and Chen Lingjun. Chen Qinglu and Axian Jian sat on a bench, Jing Hao and Bai Deng, and poor Yinlu didn't know what to do, but they were able to occupy a bench. Although Yinlu felt uncomfortable, he couldn't force anyone to sit beside him. He could only see that the young man in white with the name of Maniac was a jade pure realm sword immortal full of dragon spirit. The rest of Jing Hao, especially it was the 2 guests who arrived at Luopao Mountain later, but Yinlu couldn't see the depth. Since he couldn't see the other party's Taoism, it could explain the problem very well. Yinlu knew how much he weighed. Seeing the embarrassing situation of Yinlu, Xing Dafeng held the tray with both hands and took the Taoist Xianwei into the seat. Yinlu still had some eyesight, so he hurriedly moved to the edge of the bench and let the doorman with the wooden hairpin and Taoist costume sit there. In the middle, the millet asked the good man mountain master with his eyes. Chen Pingon nodded with a smile. The little girl in black stood up and started to work. Xing Dafeng pushed the plate to the millet, and she took out a handful of melon seeds from her sleeve and put it inside the plate. He opened the cotton satchel, and poured 2 packets of dried fish wrapped in oil paper into the porcelain plate. Then Jing Dafeng placed the plate in the middle of the table so that everyone could reach it. Not to mention the vast world, there are not many people in the whole world who dare to treat guests like this. Xiao Mo has persuaded Xiego to go away, to be precise, dragged away the sable-cap girl. Don't think that Bai Jing is only bluffing. If he really wants to fight, he will fight. Chen Pingon and Axian Jian smiled and said, Mr. Mei Qin, let's drink tea here first, and then go up the mountain to drink, and the place will be spacious. Axian Jian picked up the tea bowl and said with a smile, It's okay, it's very comfortable. Accustomed to the military career, coupled with his personality, Axian Jian has never been like the immortal master of Jing Hao. As soon as Jing Hao heard the name, Mr. Mei Qin, her hands shook as soon as she picked up the bowl, and her heartstrings tensed instantly. There are not 1,000 or a few hundred scholars who have the name Howren and the name Mei Qin, but who else can have Mr. Mei Qin, who can travel with Chen Xianjun to Luo Pao Mountain? Xianjian glanced at Jing Hao, who had already guessed his identity, and said with a smile, "On the way here, my friend also talked to me about the ownership of Qinggong Mountain. I don't take it seriously. Of course, this is your housework, and I am one of them. Outsiders have no way of talking." Chen Pingon smiled knowingly. I remember that there were sages in the Confucian temple who commented on Xianjian like this, and there were praises and criticisms in his words. Handsome talent swept across the sky, but when he was just wanton, no one dared to say that he was not at all. To put it simply, when he was leading the army to fight and rule the country and bring peace to the world, others should not make a fuss. Chen Lingjun's mind was not on the elegant young cultivator. He was busy winking with Chen Zhuliu. "Good buddy, let's use tea instead of wine and go one by one." Chen Qinglu picked up the wine bowl and drank the tea with an aura of drinking water. Chen Lingjun drank it all in one go, wiped his mouth, and sighed happily. Xianjian picked up the dried brook fish, chewed it slowly, and nodded, "It's delicious." Millet scratched his face, smiled shyly, pointed his finger at the other kinds of dried creek fish on the plate, Mr. Mei Qin, and the tiger on the ground, yellow spicy diced. "They are all delicious." Xianjian squinted and smiled, and really stretched out his hand to pick up 2 dried fish from the stream again. "Okay, they'll try them all." Millet grains also squinted and smiled. Chen Pingon introduced with a smile, "Mr. Mei Qin, her name is Zhou Mili, and she is the right protector of our Luo Pao Mountain." Xianjian nodded and said, "Listen to Zhuolu, it's good. This is what the mountain should look like." Personal opinion. Chen Qinglu had previously reminded Xianjian that he is now a shabby scholar from Luzhou, Beiju, called Chen Zhuliu. When he arrives at Luo Pao Mountain, don't miss out on Daoist Jinking's side. Out of the corner of Jing Hao's eyes, she found that Chen Lingjun, who had been grinning all the time, became more and more uncertain. Is it because he didn't know the weight of Mei Qin at all? Did he read less, had a big heart, or did he know it and didn't care? After all, this boy in Tsing Yi had brought Jing Hao too many surprises in the past few days, but any normal person seemed to be confused by Chen Lingjun. Chen Qinglu said with a smile, "Jing Qing, do you still remember that I told you that there is a friend surnamed Xian, who will help you introduce him in the future?" Chen Lingjun, who had long since taken off his boots and sat cross-legged, looked blank. "Huh? Damn, we've had so many drinks and talked so much, we forgot about it long ago, and I can't talk nonsense that I remember. Aren't you embarrassing me?" Chen Qinglu raised his sleeves, put his fingers together, pointed to the white bowl on the table, and said with a cipher, "Cup, come before Nilai." I didn't understand it if I said that earlier. I remember, why don't I remember? Chen Lingjun patted his knees, laughed loudly, and gave a thumbs up to Mr. Mei Qin, "Brother Xian, there is a hand on the wine table, this is it. That is, sit far away, or you have to pat your shoulders to show your respect." Xianjian smiled and said, "Drink too high, don't take it seriously." Chen Lingjun burst into laughter, raised one hand, pushed the door open, and was overjoyed. "Brother Chen also said that you are a normal drinker. Once you were drunk, you pushed it with your hand, and pushed it for a long time." Xianjian laughed dumbly. As a result, the boy in Tsing Yi was slapped by his master. Chen Lingjun was annoyed, and immediately restrained his smile. "Brother Xian, I'm not laughing at you. I can't keep my mouth shut when I drink. Don't mind, my family doesn't speak 2 words. Millet reminded softly, "Jing Qing, you haven't had a drink yet." Chen Lingjun sighed after learning from his own master, "You don't understand now, Jianghu Erlang, meeting by chance, hit it off at first sight, like drinking alcohol." Millet didn't want to refute Jing Qing in public, but secretly frowned two pale and yellowish brows, held the white bowl in both hands, and drank tea with her head down. Chen Lingjun knew that he had said the wrong thing, so he quickly changed his tune, turned his head and put his hand to cover his mouth, and said in a low voice, "Xiaoli, it'll help you find 10 riddles later." Millet grinned and hurriedly lowered her head. Xan Jian glanced at the Taoist priest Xianwei, who was just drinking tea for himself, and then looked at Chen Pingan. Chen Pingan nodded lightly. Jing Hao was speechless for a long time. The old monk has attended thousands of ceremonies and banquets in his life, but he has never encountered such a trivial wine bureau. Opposite the table is the dragon slayer. Bai Deng has reached the extreme as an enemy, and he has not recovered until now. Drinking tea at the same table with an enemy who killed dragons where there are dragons in the world is a situation that Bai Deng could not even imagine. As for Yinlu, it is even less clear that he, the former deputy city owner of Xianzhou City, and the Taoist priest Xianwei sitting next to him are the real owner of the Xianzhou City, and the owner of the Taoist hairpin left in the world. After drinking tea, we divided into 2 groups. Chen Pingan and Xiaomi Mili were responsible for taking Xan Jian around the mountain, and went to Jiling Peak of Zushan to take a look. As for Chen Qinglu, they followed Chen Lingjun to the nearby Jisa Peak for a drink. A white-haired boy never came to the table, just squatted at the gate of the mountain, took out a booklet, and began to record the year, month, day, and so. Walking on the mountain road of Jiling Peak where Zushitang is located. Xan Jian took the initiative to say, this time, the Confucian temple was sealed with the 5 sacred mountain monarchs of Treasure Pingzhou. It was not the Yaxing, Wenxing, or the Confucian temple leader or Shuigong's abbot for the ceremony, but the 5 disciples of the Most Holy Master came forward. Their current posture is somewhat similar to yours now. One of them, this time I showed up in the wild world, is a beloved disciple of the Most Holy Master who made no secret of his partiality. There is also the one from the outer world. I heard Chen Qinglu say that you followed Li Xing to stop the wild world. You may have met. Long ago, he was the accountant of those ancient scholars. In addition to his difficult studies, he was also responsible for managing and earning money. Chen Pingan was stunned and nodded. I just had a face-to-face meeting. At that time, the younger generation failed to recognize the identity of the sage. If he had known the identity of the other party earlier, in Chen Lingjun's wine table jargon, it would have been a few words high and low. On the wild land, where the spiritual energy was thin, there were 2 people living next to each other. Before leaving the dojo, the bearded man found an iron sword, a high crown, put on a Confucian shirt, and was holding a sword. Xan Jian gathered 3,000 pieces for a while, took off a long sword from the wall, and rushed to the wild hinterland together with his friends. Chen Pingan asked with a smile, Mr. Mei Qin, after drinking later, can this junior ask you for a copybook? Xan Jian shook his head and said, Master Chen, it's okay to drink. When we arrived at the Bayou Square outside the Patriarch's Hall of Jiling Peak, the mountains and rivers were picturesque, and Xan Jian leaned on the railing and overlooked the magnificent scene. Xiaomi found that the good man mountain master seemed to be waiting for something, and when the Mr. Mei Qin moved silently, the good man mountain master looked a little disappointed. Got it, the good man mountain master wants to fight poetry. Oh, Wei Shanjun said, the limericks of the good man Shanju are a must. They went along the mountain road to Jisa Peak. Chen Pingan was too embarrassed to take Xan Jian to his study in the bamboo building. Zhu Lian came forward and helped the mountain owner entertain rare guests together. The wind blows through the courtyard, and the iron horses under the eaves make a neighing sound. Xan Jian, who had previously said that he did not drink alcohol, said with a stern face after the apron-wearing old cook served a few plates of appetizers, I don't need the immortal brewing on the mountain, the market is fine. Except for the millet-nibbling melon seeds, all of them got a little drunk. Jian asked with a smile, "Is the content of that copybook reviewing old words from old papers, or improvising new words?" Chen Pingan was a little embarrassed. "Doesn't this mean that you can have both old and new words? Just the trivial matter of grabbing an extra blank rice paper." Jian, after all, was not familiar with the temperament of the second shopkeeper of the wine shop, so he said to himself, "Then the old words are fine." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "One sentence is enough." Jian wondered, "Which sentence?" Chen Pingan smiled and looked at Xiaomi, and made a gesture of holding a cup in one hand and twisting his wrist with the other hand, like a riddle. After thinking for a while, Xiaomi understood the answer, and immediately raised his hand. I know, the good man Shanju hopes to be beautiful." Mr. Qin writes down a sentence, just 6 words. The dragon and the word Jian. It's really written too many wonderful and well-known words, which can be both heroic and graceful. The grain of millet moistened his throat, straightened his waist and gave the answer aloud, "Look at the sword while drunk." Jian was silent for a moment, then said with a smile, "Then please trouble Mr. Zhu to cook 2 more dishes and 2 more jars of wine." Chen Lingjun was refreshed and brought his old and new friends to drink in his house, which was a rare opportunity. Before climbing the mountain, I had a few words with Jing Dafeng, and asked him to say a few good words to Wei Shanjun and ask for a few jars of Xianzhou wine. Side purchase. Brother Dafeng is usually unreliable, and he is still very reliable at critical moments. He nodded and agreed, saying that he would carry the burden and personally deliver it to Uncle Qin, guaranteeing that it is a good wine, and it must be collected by the Piyun Mountain Ritual Division. Years of wine brewing on the mountain. That is to say, there are friends present, otherwise Chen Lingjun would have to knock his legs and rub shoulders for Brother Dafeng. Walking on the mountain road, Chen Lingjun flung his sleeves up. Chen Lingjun was really happy because he saw Chen Zhuliu, and took pictures from time to time. With a pat on Chen Zhuliu's sleeve, TSK, this tendon is sturdy. Brother Dafeng said it well. The young man has a lot of firepower, and his can make a pie. I just don't know that Brother Qin, who was of family 500 years ago, has found a wife now. It is unlikely that he has no money in his pocket and his waist is not hard. With a pair of colorful leather bags, he deceives those who like talents and beauties at the foot of the mountain. The little girl in the novel is all right, but in the mountains, she is not very popular. Unless, looks like Chief Shou and Mi Jianxian. As for the old cook, it is normal to be sloppy and be a bachelor. Although they are friends, deep down in Chen Lingjun's heart, there is still a clear distance between them. Chen Zhuliu, Brother Jia, Bai Busy, the water brother of Yu Jiang, Li Yuan, Ho of Jidu Longting, and others, they are all the best friends in Chen Lingjun's heart. As for Senior Jing and fellow Daoist Bai Deng, after all, they just met, and they have to see how they drink at the table. After a long time outside the table, they see people's hearts. In any case, the more they drink, the more friends they have. Chen Qinglu squinted at Jing Hao, who was walking on Chen Lingjun's right hand, and said with a heartfelt smile, "Meet again." This Jing Hao is still a little brainy, knowing that he took the initiative to come here to visit Chen Lingjun. Jing Hao didn't dare to reveal his mountain connection with Chen Xianjun at all, so he could only answer in his heart, "Junior never thought that I would be able to meet Chen Xianjun here again, and I am more than happy." Chen Qinglu twitched the corners of his mouth, seeing how this fellow was not pleasing to the eye, so he began to sprinkle salt on Jing Hao's wound. It's okay to admit counseling on the left and right sides. He Chen Pingan is just a little Yuan Ing of the 10 realms now. You are a cultivator of the Ascension realm, and you are still at a distance. Hee, the realm is not high, and the tone is so loud. Can you bear it? Jing Hao hesitated. I really want to tell the truth, Senior, I can do it. Jian Kai Tuyu, a mountain, a city head inscriber who was not confused. Don't say that the fall is nascent soul, that is, Chen Pingan has no cultivation base at all. I, Jing Hao, is in other people's territory, and I listen to a few strange words of yin and yang. What is it? Chen Qinglu sneered. It's just that there are 2 more Ascension swordsmen from the demon clan around. What are you afraid of? You didn't take the initiative to provoke Luo Pao Mountain. Do they dare to kill you with a sword? It's really a Confucian temple rule. Is it a decoration? Why, I have been lying on the mountain for a long time, and I have cultivated a turtle method. When I can shrink my head, I will shrink my head. Jing Hao was silent. I was afraid that I would open my mouth and say something tough. As a result, Chen Xianjun turned around and sold himself, so there is really no need to leave Luopa Mountain today. I couldn't believe it before, but now it was revealed by Chen Xianjun. Jing Hao's heart trembled, and it really was 2 Ascension realms, Jian Xiu. The key is that they are from the Wild Demon Clan. It is necessary to know that the Wild Ascension Realm monster and the other Ascension Realm monks in the rest of the world cannot be treated in general. This is a fact recognized on the mountain. Jing Hao glanced at the boy and Xing Yi next to him. Thanks to this one, he had the chance to go up the mountain. He was unable to participate in the discussions at the Confucian temple in China, but he was able to drink a glass of wine in Luo Pao Mountain. If this spread out, the reputation of Qinggong Mountain could be saved a lot. Chen Lingjun noticed the expressions of Chen Zhuliu and Jing Hao, and asked suspiciously, "Sneaky, what are you talking about?" Chen Qinglu smiled and said, "I dared to talk to Immortal Master Jing a few words casually. I am afraid that there is something wrong in what I said, and if I accidentally touch the reverse scale of the predecessors, I will be angry with me." Jing Hao is self-aware but unspeakable. Only Chen Lingjun, who was kept in the dark, was still trying to smooth things over there, and persuaded bitterly, "Don't be like this, we are all friends. We haven't even got to the table to drink, so you say such hurtful words. It's not good, listen. Mine, hold back, drink and chat again, there is no seniority at the wine table." At the same time, the boy in Xing Yi reminded Chen Zhuliu in his heart, "What's the matter? Didn't I tell you about the identity and background of Immortal Master Jing before? Don't speak bluntly in front of seniors like Jing Hao. The Ascension Realm cultivator has his own temper. Listen to me, don't be so rushed when you talk." Chen Qinglu said in a heartfelt voice, "I thought I had a great cultivator on the mountain like Jing Hao as a friend, and I forgot about my old friend who was too embarrassing to go out to drink." Chen Lingjun couldn't stand this the most, and was a little annoyed. He glared and said to himself, "You can't tell the difference, you are the one who bullshit. I'll punish myself for 3 bowls later, you remember to keep up." After hesitating for a moment, Chen Lingjun was still worried that Chen Zhuliu had a bad temper and liked the book business. "I know how difficult it is to wander around the world alone. You guy, you are not very skilled, you are the best face, I also know. So there are some hypocritical things. Why do you want me to do me a favor and help you arrange a place to stay in the Beiyue realm? I will not mention it, but if you want to talk about the money of the gods, it is an external thing. After the buddies separated, I still saved some over the years. You can take them all." I agreed in advance. "I will divide it into 2 parts, one for you, and the other for the same good brothers. I don't have many friends, I don't have a lot of money in my pocket, and I like to be the uncle, and it's only the 2 of you. Don't think I talk too much, and don't be embarrassed. Whoever we are with whom, the hard-hitting friendship is there, so if you encounter difficulties, I will give you both the money. It's enough to save the money again. It's not bad for him to keep it. If the money is not enough, you'll borrow it from someone. I'm not bragging. I'm here on Luopa Mountain. It's just a small matter of a sentence, and you don't need to owe any favors. Wei Shanjun of Pai Yunshan is the one who likes to hold night banquets. With me, that's only a good buddy who didn't cut the chicken's head and burn the yellow paper. Tell it yourself. Look, since my money is your money, money or something, it's a thing. It's definitely not a thing. Also, I just said that if you encounter something that can't be solved by spending money, don't hide it with me today. If you can't do it, look down on me. If you say a word, I will accompany you to leave Luapa Mountain. It doesn't matter if you go to Beiju Luzhou. I have a lot of friends in the mountains over there, and they are all things. I used to think that you are a high-spirited fellow. No matter how poor you are still a scholar. I may not like to hear this, so I am not willing to show you the incense that thieves can scare people when they say it. Speaking of which, Chen Lingjun patted his friend's arm lightly, hesitated for a while, and said softly, I know that when I ask someone for mercy, no matter how good the relationship is, the heart will still feel uncomfortable. Maybe the better the relationship, the more uncomfortable it is. It's all right. We'll be at the wine table later, we too have a good drink. Chen Lingjun felt that he was not a fool, and that he had not really encountered difficulties. With the stubborn temper of a pauper like Chen Julio, he would never travel thousands of miles across continents to come to Luapa Mountain to see him. No matter what others are like, anyway, Chen Lingjun always felt that the most difficult thing in the world is to ask a friend a favor, which will make friends feel embarrassed. Chen Qinglu smiled and stretched out his hand to hold the Tsingyi boy's head. Chen Lingjun slapped the guy's palm off with a slap, and said angrily, I'm here with you, and am almost moved by talking. You're good, no big or small, am looking for a drink. Why don't you feel moved, brother, am also very moved. Ha, then cry for your brother, hurry up. Bai Dang, who only dared to silently follow behind them, was swaying with his legs at the moment. This boy in Tsingyi really dared to talk. Does he really not know how the word death is written? Chen Qinglu noticed the flow of his heart, turned his head and smiled. Little guy, that's all you want to see your ancestors. Bai Dang was full of sweat and was speechless. As the son of a dragon, he has to drink at the same table as a dragon slayer. Those who shouldn't go out of the mountains, really shouldn't go out of the mountains to go outside the mountains. Pushing open the door, which was never locked, Chen Lingjun led a few friends to take a seat at the wine table in the main hall. Soon Jing Dafeng brought a load of drinks, followed by a pink skirt girl with a pastry box and a fruit bamboo basket. Chen Wanchu gave everyone a blessing, put the cakes and fruits on the table, and said, the immortal masters will wait a moment, and the drinks will be delivered immediately. Chen Lingjun was full of embarrassment. Chen Wanchu glanced at Chen Lingjun, and said softly, treat your guests well. Chen Lingjun didn't even dare to look at her, just nodded vigorously. In Luopao Mountain, apart from the old cook, Chen Nuanchu's cooking skills are not bad, not to mention that she has learned a few good dishes from the old cook. The smart Chen Wanchu went to the kitchen of his house, and soon brought a large food box here, with 7 or 8 kinds of wine and vegetables, full of color, fragrance, and taste. Leaving the house, she gently closed the door. Soon the drink started, and the boy in Tsingyi's voice was so loud that he seemed to be punching with his friends. She didn't even have to look, she knew that Chen Lingjun was standing on the bench. Jing Dafeng waited outside and asked with a smile, aren't you angry? Chen Wanchu shook his head gently and said with a smile, he is rarely busy with business, so how can he be angry? Jing Dafeng began to complain, I heard that at the foot of the mountain, in the town, Chen Lingjun had several morning drinks. Chen Wanchu raised his brows and bit his lip, I'm too lazy to care about him. At the wine table, after punishing himself for 3 bowls, Chen Lingjun was already standing on the stool, shaking his hands, brother, my heart is connected. Chen Qinglu shook his hands and laughed, I'm using my brother's brains. I'm afraid that my brother will have a hard time, and I will do nothing when my brother beats me. Listening to these nonsense-drinking words, Jing Hao and Bai Deng could only stare at the side. Chen Lingjun and Chen Qinglu started boxing in the small-town dialect. The two brothers are good, the fifth leader, Lulu Shun. Chen Xianjun in the blue shirt was at a loss to look around at the book and sword, but he couldn't do it, and he paid 100,000 things for 2 or 3 cups. After 3,000 years, a sword swept across the sky, flew over the vast Dongting, and then crossed the ancient Shu Wanqingshan, and came here again, not to kill the dragon, but to be full of drunkenness with close friends, and to compete with wine. On the border between Yuzhou and Hongzhou, on an official road to Yuzhang County, 3 plainly decorated carriages are inconspicuous. In the middle of a carriage, the Emperor Song He and the Queen Song Mian, all dressed in civilian clothes, sat side by side in the carriage. She lifted the curtain from time to time to enjoy the scenery along the way outside. In the carriage at the end, Xiao Yao, the servant of the Ministry of Punishment, and Li Baozhen, the first official of the Weaving Bureau of Yuzhou, who came halfway, were from the 4th grade. One is a hot Beijing official, and the other is a local official on the fringes of officialdom. Li Baozhen smiled and said, "With your light, I can sit and hurry." Zhao Yu smiled and said, "I still have to thank His Majesty's approachable people, so that we don't have to pay attention to those red tapes." Li Baozhen clicked his tongue. Zhao Yao smiled and dismissed it. Although the relationship between the two parties was close, he still had to say a few official words. They are real old acquaintances, and they are all children of big families in Fulu Street, Huaiwang County. Over the years, Zhao Yao and Li Baozhen have been in correspondence with each other. Li Baozhen said in his heart, "I heard that the great court meeting in the capital, led by Yuan Jingding, suggested moving the capital. If Dali really moved the capital to the current capital of Luojing, for a certain feudal lord who is now in the wild, it would really be the bottom of the pile. Get paid." The first Hu-jun of Shujian Lake was Xia Fan, a heroic spirit of the Dali court, and Wu Guanqi, an assistant officer, who used to be in charge of the intelligence collection and sorting of the Dali court in the central part of Izhou, and Li Baozhen, who was in charge of intelligence in the southeast. Colleagues with equal authority. The Dali Song clan is recognized as having 3 official offices, the capital city and the Shansha dynasty composed of localities, the second official office composed of various gods, and the third official office is the Longquan County Kiln Supervision and Construction Bureau, Yuzhou Weaving Bureau, and Hongzhou Logging Bureau. These are institutions whose chief officials are not high in rank, but every chief official is a well-deserved emperor. Of course, Lin Jingqing, the Logging Institute, is probably the only exception. Zhao Yu glanced at Li Baozhen, smiled and said nothing. Li Baozhen leaned his head against the wall of the car, and pointed at Zhao Yao, "You guy, you like to talk in your stomach since you were a child." In terms of official fortune, Li Baozhen, who is a 4th-rank official, is naturally far inferior to Zhao Yao, a fellow countryman who was promoted by His Majesty as a minister of the Ministry of Punishment. The younger generation who went out of the small town did not talk about cultivating and becoming on the mountain, but Zhao Yao was the most successful official. But if we only talk about the territory of Yuzhou, the top officials are of course the governor and the general of Yuzhou. Neither of them can control the Weaving Bureau and Li Baozhen, but Li Baozhen and the Weaving Bureau can make the 2 military and political officials in the frontiers sleep uneasy. Because Yuzhou is an important military town and a battleground for military strategists, Cao Mao, the general of Yuzhou, is also in charge of the military affairs of Hongzhou next door. Cao Mao was not qualified to take a car at this moment, so he could only follow a group of cultivators who followed the army and rode ahead to clear the way. When Li Baozhen went to Yuzhou Weaving Bureau to take office, Li Baozhen brought 2 henchmen, both surnamed Zhu, father and daughter. At this moment, Zhu He and Zhu Lu were riding horses behind, following the convoy from a distance. The Empress asked in a low voice, "Where is Yu Yu?" Song he smiled and patted the back of her hand, comforting, "Don't worry, this clan elder of yours just looks weak and doesn't speak well. Although she is young, she is actually very smart. Otherwise, how would she become an earthly branch cultivator?" The military master behind the scenes. In the headed carriage, a woman and a girl sat opposite each other, and the little girl kept gazing at the bead on the woman's hand. "You are the Empress Dowager of a country. She has a graceful air and doesn't care about it." She raised her white lotus-like wrist, shook her bracelet, and asked with a smile, "Do you recognize me?" The girl shook her head and said something strange, "You must pretend that you don't know each other, even if you haven't seen it before." Nan Zhan knew the character of this little girl very well. She looked careless, but Yenna was actually bad, so she continued to ask, "There is no such thing in the Yu family's collection, nor is there anything in our Dali's treasure house of B characters?" The Yu clan of the Shangzhou kingdom was not visible in the officialdom of Dali, but only in name, only in charge of the silk and tea services of the local official camp. However, aside from the first-class surnames of the Yuan Saguan family, not to mention the face, just talking about the background and the inside, the Yu family is actually similar to the Tianshui Zhao family and the Zi Zhaoyan family, but the Fufeng Qiu family and the Poyangma family are not as good as the Yu family, but the inside story is really just the inside story. Few Dali officials dare to say that they understand the context and depth of it. As for the treasure house of the B character of the Dali court, it is a strictly forbidden place, and it is a woman with such an identity. Yu Ye's face was complicated, and she shook her head vigorously. "There's no way, Cui Guesher has beaten a few of us, and no one is allowed to use this thing, otherwise even the memory of this life will be erased and become an idiot." Listening to Yuan Huajing earlier, there was a poor who didn't listen to me, an elder who belonged to the cultivator of the earth branch, and was my senior, just because he found a bead in private, and then he was cleaned up by Cui Guesher himself, and the end was miserable. The little girl patted the Tsu waist card. It was originally his thing, and I belonged to fill in the vacancy. If he did not know the reason, I would still be learning female red embroidery at home. Nan Zhan pretended to hear about this, and smiled. "You are a monk of the military family. Even if you don't take the place of this person's earthly branch, you will go to Jinwu Mountain or Fengshua Temple to cultivate." Nan Zhan joked, "The position of our Grand Master has been vacant for several years now, so you don't have to be so nervous, not to mention that Cui Guesher has always placed great importance on you and has high expectations." The little girl sighed and said pitifully, "In officialdom, I also understand the principle of one emperor and one courtier, but the problem is that Cui Guesher is gone, and he still has a hidden officer and junior brother who has returned home." "Empress Dowager, don't you?" "I know, the few of us were taught a few times to the death by that hidden official in the capital, and they were cleaned up by him." Nan Zhan's face turned pale in an instant, but it wasn't Yu Ye's words, that he was outrageous, and that he had committed some taboo in the officialdom, but now the woman had a headache when she heard the name of the hidden official. Seeing that things were not good, Yu immediately shut up obediently. Nan Zhan subconsciously rubbed the bead string on his hand, his face uncertain. Yu knew that Chen Pingan once walked into the palace, but what happened, even if she was a monk of the earth branch, she still didn't know. To be able to pretend that you don't know something you shouldn't know is a science. The last time Chen Pingan took Xiao Mo to the palace to meet the Queen Mother Nan Zhuang, the reason was to ask Lu Jiang for the shards of lifelike porcelain. At that time, the woman wore this string of bracelets secretly made on the mountain, and each bead was a priceless, spiritual rhinoceros bead. And this kind of orb, because it can make people remember the memories of the past life. One is the first life. The Qi practitioner sits down, according to the Taoist formula, rubbing the bead, a mustard seed to restrain the mind. You can get a clear understanding of the time and overcome the restrictions of time. The body is like a colorful phoenix flying with wings, and the mind is in a picture book that records the picture scroll of the past life. The scene of the past life is deeply remembered, and the picture scroll on that page will be colorful, no different from the truth. Some people with shallow memory, a picture scrolled, the colors faded along with it, the memory was blurred, and the picture was dry and inky, leaving only an outline. Nan Zhan let out a faint sigh and squeezed out a smile, but when she thought of this trip to Lijiang, it was very likely that she would meet that in Mud Bottle Alley, who was going to run wild, and her face turned gloomy again. Almost any sect with a deep foundation will always have this item, even Bai Yujing is no exception. The purpose is to be able to free some soldiers from the ancestors of the world, and to find a needle in a haystack, to find this life from the vast world of red dust, and then to bring them back to the mountain to renew the path. Jiang Zhaomo of the Ziki building in Baiyujing and Yu Axayan of Tongya sect were all in this situation. Therefore, the Lingxi pearl has always been a rare existence with a price and no market. Once it appears in the world, it is the cultivator that must compete for it. Therefore, such treasures on the mountain, no matter who keeps them in their hands, are well prepared and will never be useless. Because those immortal mansions that have no such thing in their own treasury, no matter whether they are unlucky or have no money, when they urgently need a rhinoceros bead to help a certain ancestor get enlightened, they have to ask the sect with the rhinoceros bead. The importance of incense on the mountain. As for the bracelet of the southern hairpin, there are as many as 12 rhinoceros beads strung together. Except for the few used by her, most of the other jewels that contained memories were previously consumed by the unfamiliar squire beside Chen Pingan with a sharp sword light, and they were reduced to rubbish. But Nan Zhuang is also not sure about it. It seems that 2 of the rhinoceros pearls, although they are also dim, seem to be restricted by the unfamiliar, using a kind of swordsmanship. With a jewel, what I remember is only a part of the personnel affairs of the previous life. Those are those pictures that are relatively unforgettable and clear in memory. If you were a man of Taoism in your previous life, you will encounter and pass through the practice pass, with the help of the rhinoceros bead. Naturally, it will not be forgotten, so this move can become a shortcut to mountaineering without sequelae. The old coachman who drove for the Queen Mother Doli all these years reminded in his heart, you have to be careful of the demons you encounter at the bottleneck of Yuanying. If it's really that Qin, you won't even think about entering the Jade Pure realm in your life. The real identity of the old coachman is an ancient god, the chief officer of the Thunder Department. The old man continued, in the heart, all kinds of demons are born. When the heart is destroyed, all kinds of demons are destroyed. Nan Zhan's eyes lit up and smiled, thank you senior for reminding me. The old man said, it's nothing, it's a sentence written on a novel of ghosts and monsters. I saw it and thought it made some sense. It was very popular in the Yamashita market in the early years, and the price is still cheap. This travelogue is poor. Nanpin resisted the urge to curse. Yu turned into that silly look again. Nan Zhan noticed the dignified atmosphere in the carriage, and packed up his complicated thoughts, seemingly casually asking, you are all looking for suitable treasures from the B-character's secret vault. If I remember correctly, are there any problems with those? The Xingbu of the card is dedicated to the monks, and with their military merit, they can exchange for the equivalent treasures with the Xingbu. The officials of the Xingbu are all selected from the treasure house of the C character, which has a relatively low rank and is piled up into mountains. Logically speaking, there must be a more hidden character library. Yu looked at the Empress Dowager with a playful expression. Nan Zhan knew that he had lost his words, when I didn't ask. Yu grinned, the Empress Dowager, there's nothing you can't say about this matter, it's not taboo. Cui Guosher once told me that if anyone asks her face-to-face in the future, she'll tell her the answer. Nan Zhan's face was pale and colorless, thanks to the woman's fair skin, she was not so conspicuous. Yu pointed to herself, then pointed to the woman, and then gave the answer. The character library of the Dali dynasty is me, you, us, all the monks of the earthly branch, where the Empress Dowager is located. A member of the Song clan of Dali, he is a genealogy cultivator on all the mountains, a mountain and water god, and even more. After pausing for a moment, the little girl's eyes were firm and she said solemnly, moreover, it is a detailed record of every yellow book of the Dali dynasty's household registration, every ordinary person of the Dali dynasty. It is a detailed record of every fish scale book of the cadastre. An inch of the land of the mountains and rivers of Li, Nanzhan was silent. Yu smiled and exhaled softly, and the girl began to close her eyes to rest. I'm just learning to speak from the national teacher Cui Yu, and I'm so tired. In Piyin Mountain, where the pine shade is rich, Shanjun Weibo closed the very heavy booklet, rested his cheek with one hand, and tapped the golden earring beside his ear with his thumb, hesitating about making up his own name. One of the vassal hilltops of Luopao Mountain, by Jiantai, Xiao Mo is a little relieved. Xiago is whispering with the white-haired boy who is the editor of the genealogy, and Guozhuzhou, whom they regard as the leader of the alliance, as if they are together discuss big things. As for the provocation at the gate of the mountain, Xiago has completely forgotten about it, as if nothing happened. Xiao Mo moved slightly in his heart and walked away. In the capital of Dali, a young monk named Xing Yi, the young head of the Wudao sect, planned to follow Mr. Chen's instructions in the letter and go to a xianjia in where it was said that he would not have to pay for his name, and then go to the alley outside the building, and find a pair of masters and apprentices named Lu Jiao and Zhao Duanming. In the old cook's house, Chen Pingan, who had been drinking and swaying, only took Xiao Mo, quietly left Luopao Mountain, and came to the ancestral house in Mupin Lane in the small town. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.